you have big shoes to fill. The giants came before you. They've written down the blueprint. They've handed it to you. It's up to you to pick it up, to soak it in, to read it, to cultivate it, to perfect it, to master it.
This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode.
All right, hey, welcome back, guys. Thanks for stopping in. Another episode of Choices Not Chances. I got a good one for you today. Everybody likes to talk about Afghanistan, likes to talk about Iraq because people grew up there. Some of us grew up in those actual countries and the cities they're in. Today we have Jared Prewitt, who's the author of It'll Buff Out, a new book that he just released in the last past year. Great book. Show you the cover of it here, and then we'll get down to business. But we wanted to, I wanted to have him on because there were several points in the book where I just found myself coming out of the book and thinking about the fact that things that happened in Ramadi with his friends, with his Marines, wouldn't happen today. And the reason they wouldn't is because we got the after actions and lessons learned off of the blood that they spilled in those cities. And so that's something important to me to really reach back, because when I come through infantry training battalion, I was getting these guys and their senior Marines after actions. And so some of the things that are touched on in the book, we have come a long way as far as training is concerned. So I reached out to Jared, and he's been gracious enough to give us some of his time and come on. So Jared, I appreciate you coming on and having a chat, man.
Hey, thank you for having me on. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Outstanding. So we'll just kind of get into it. In the beginning, I like to start with childhood dynamics. So if you want to just kind of walk me through childhood. Where'd you come from? Who'd you come from? Siblings, sports, religion?
Okay. I grew up in Wisconsin, just about half an hour south of Green Bay. My father was a pastor. My mom's a teacher. And we grew up in the church, did a lot of youth group, all that kind of stuff. I have two sisters, an older sister and a younger sister, so I'm the middle child. Had a really good upbringing. Being the middle child, I got blamed for everything, but that's okay. It, as my dad would say, builds character. So
yes.
yes. So real good childhood. Very sheltered. Like I said, we grew up in the church, so growing up inside of there, you're kind of protected in a way. And I see the way our world is now. Like I was very I've become very thankful and kind of have taken that and tweaked it my own way for my kids and whatnot. Like I don't want to shelter them, I want to expose them, but in the right way, not just kind of thrown into the fire. But that was of completely my own doing. And some things happened throughout my childhood that shaped me and nudged me on a certain path, and it eventually led me to joining the Marine Corps after being a senior in high school during 9/11 and seeing all that happen, and being in the library watching with hundreds of other kids watching the second plane hit one of the towers. That, you know, that sticks with you. That has a lasting impression. But I wouldn't get the final push to join until it was the second battle of Fallujah. I was watching on the news, and I just felt like I was missing out. I was in college. I had always wanted to go to college, and the Marine Corps, it was always just kind of this thing that I always wanted to do, and I didn't want to be one of those guys that said, I thought about joining one day and just never did. So just all the things from my grandpa pushing me in a certain direction, kind of leaving religion behind in a way, just because of some of the stuff that happened as a kid, just pushed me to kind of rebel against it. Like many pastors' kids do. I don't know how many people know pastors' kids, but
PKs,
they can be a rowdy bunch.
Yeah, man.
And,
So can we touch on that, like the different things that maybe changed your perception or changed the way you wanted to go?
yeah, so I was at a summer camp, and it was around 5th, 6th grade, and so I was, what are you, 11, 10, 12, something like that, and just got in this situation with this one of the counselors there, and they're all supposed to be these Christian men, these role models that kids are supposed to look up to and aspire to, and nothing serious happened, but it was definitely like red flags going off all over. He had me alone in this tent. He got to get a little handsy, and then thank God some other kid was coming back to grab something from the campsite, and I just squirmed out, made some noise, and just let it be known, like, I'm coming with you, and got out of that situation. But from that, and there's another thing that I put in the book too that happened at summer camp a year after that one. And so from counselor grab ass, I was completely put off from everything to do with religion. Just how could somebody who's supposed to have my best interests in mind like take advantage of me as a young kid? And then the next year, after having been initially pushed away, and you start to look at girls in a different light, and just start to see this other side of life that I hadn't been really exposed to, being growing up in the church and being sheltered and whatnot. So I had this girl this next year at this camp just come up to me, and she's like, "I think you're really cute. You want to get in my pants?" And I was just like, I didn't really even know what that meant at the time, but I was just like, all right, sweet, like, chicks into me. And that just kind of solidified that trajectory away from youth group and all that stuff. Like, I still continued to go, but like I started getting into partying and drinking and going out at night, and telling my parents I'd be at one place and I definitely was not there. I was somewhere else. And just that, the typical kid, rebellious teenager stuff. And
sure. Now if we can go back, after the incident happened with Handsy counselor, did you report him or tell anybody about that, or
no,
just kind of creeped you out?
I was completely like just ashamed and so afraid and embarrassed to tell anybody. And this whole thing, like, it was a repressed memory for years. I mean, I just kind of buried it and never thought about it again until I was actually going through therapy after, this is getting the cart way above in front of the horse, but after I had my stroke and going through all that and healing my brain and all this stuff, all that stuff kind of started coming back, and I was just like, oh, holy shit, like, that is, like, I could, pinpoint on a piece of paper, like, the dots that connect my life and why I ended up where I ended up as.
Right.
And kind of to the title of this podcast, it's choices, and those are choices that I made based on the experiences that I was having. And we go throughout all our life making those choices based on our experience. And I can look back and see, because I also struggled with like imposter syndrome for a really long time, and in many ways I still do. I still battle with it, but it came from my junior year. I was cut from our high school soccer team, and like everybody was like, dude, you should have been, like, if not the starter, you should have at least made the team, and blah blah blah, like this, that, and the other thing. And it was a politically driven choice made by the coaches. Like, it is what it is. Like, this happened so long ago, I can't even believe I'm talking about it right now. But but it led me to think, like, I'm not worthy of something, even though I know I am. And just that conflict and that internal battle within me, I would lose that battle. I would let that negative voice win and just be like, no, you're not worthy. Like, just stick to what you're doing. Just coast. Like, don't grow. Don't do anything. Just stay in your comfort zone type of thing. So
Sure.
had a lot of growing, done a lot of growing up.
Yeah.
So
And so you say you're a senior during 9/11,
yep.
watching the towers hit, and that I know what that does. I know that feeling. And so you you say the final catalyst was Fallujah '04, Fallujah
Yeah.
1, or Fallujah 2.
Um, yeah, I'm pretty
Probably
sure it was 2
2
because
was
it was
more
in the fall.
publicized. Yeah.
Yeah, because the first one was in the spring, and then the second one was in the fall later that year.
Mm.
And so
Now, had you already been kind of leaning towards serving in some branch of the military, or?
all right, here we go. So I did a report on a World War II vet. My grandpa was in World War II. He served under Patton in his Third Army. He was part of the 87th Infantry Division within that, and went through the
Enlisted
Bulge,
or?
went over the, and he got drafted. Yeah, so
Okay.
enlisted. Yep. And he told me just his experience, and some of these things he was telling me. My mom and my aunt, after, they were like, he's never talked to us about the war, like, ever. And my mom and her sister, their entire lives, nothing. And for whatever reason, he opened up to me, and I cherish his memory forever. And that pushed me to gain interest in the military as a whole. So I wanted to know why my grandpa still, I mean, you could see just the huge impact of the war 50 years later.
Sure.
While I'm talking to him, sitting in the living room. And I wanted to know, like, what's that all about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What
that
kind
really
of
got me.
stories? What kind of stories would he share with you?
So the one that sticks with me the most, well, really, there's two. There's one from the Battle of the Bulge where he lost. I think he said it was one of his best friends that he had served with. He lost him in a artillery strike on Christmas Eve, and that hits different. The Germans started singing Silent Night in German, Stille Nacht, and the Americans started to sing it back quietly and more as the night went on, feeling that there was kind of some kind of goodwill in the air. Everybody knows about the Christmas truce in World War I and that type of thing. So they sang back, and the Nazis were at the top of this hill. They were encamped around the base, dug in foxholes, all that stuff. And I guess just their voices and being able to just kind of figure out where they were exactly at the base of the hill, and just kind of shelled the hell out of them right mid-song. And he lost one of his best friends that night. And the second story was, and I got to figure out what this is, and this is kind of the basis for my third book, is going to be about my grandpa's journey through this time. And he's talked about this large tank battle. So Patton was the tank guy, like the tank master, and they're in this huge tank battle, and they were the infantry. My grandpa was infantry, so they were with the tanks. The tanks were doing their thing, and he and his guys split off. They're going house to house through this town, and comes face to face with a Nazi inside of a room, and they both point, they both squeeze the trigger. The Nazi's gun jammed, his didn't, and he's just looking at me with just like crocodile tears in his eyes, and he's like, I'll never forget that man's eyes. And that was the thing that really stuck to me. Like, it's been 50 years. This dude is an evil Nazi. Who knows what kind of horrors he's committed throughout this war. And my grandpa just has these just remorse, and just still from all these years later. And that really kind of just sparked this, like, there's a lot more to this war thing than just a cool action sequence in a movie or whatever. It was kind of at a young age, and I definitely didn't understand it. I was way too young, way too immature, but Those are the things that really stuck with me from that conversation.
Yeah. So what drove the Marine instead of the Army?
So in 7th grade, for better or for worse, I read this book on Vietnam. It is like Hill 410 or Hill 488 was the title, and it just described Marines in a way that I was just like, this is, if I'm ever going to join the military, and I was all about the military, I was like, I want to join the Marines. Like, just the esprit de corps, the way they're described. I mean, everyone thinks Marines are just badass, and I I mean, whatever, cheesy, whatever,
I
slaying
tend
the
to
dragon
agree.
and all that, like it's legit. Like, there's a reason why, and I don't know how much validity is to the this meme that I saw, but it has all the branches, and I think it was actually a picture from a media site, but it was like every branch, and it was like rating their strength of like recruiting or like their health as a military branch, and all the other branches were like poor, whatever the ranking was, weak, and the Marine Corps was just strong. And I was just like, hell yeah, like, yes, even in 2024, like, we're still doing the damn thing.
Marines will always hold the line. That's a fact. The
Yep.
battle will change, and the place will change, and tools will change. The Marines will always
Marines
hold the
will
line.
mostly stay the same. We'll be holding up bazookas or whatever at our crotch and taking pictures, and
But winning wars, baby.
but winning wars too, damn it.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. So you decide to go.
Yep.
Was boot camp anything notable from boot camp to you? I know that I've seen some things in the book as far as learning the limitations of your body.
Yeah.
Let's get into that a bit.
Yeah. So boot camp, I mean, I always tend to kind of shy away from boot camp because I kind of echo the sentiment that it was more hilarious than anything, especially looking back on it. I mean, there's only so many places you're going to be able to go to where you're standing in a squad bay in a row with a bunch of other dudes and a bunch of other dudes on the other side. You're all staring at each other, and it's 6 a.m. in the morning, and there's like 2 guys that are pissing their pants because they didn't wake up early to hit the head. Like,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but where else are you going to run into that?
It doesn't happen. Yeah, dude, that was
funny.
much the same for me. It's very low light of my career, but if there was anything funny about it, it was like what you're talking about. I was watching grown men cry or
Yep.
fall apart or,
But no, boot camp was it's that part of training where at least to me, the main focus was to develop someone mentally. I mean, also build them up physically, but the mental aspect is really what I think kind of hit home for me, is to be able to realize, like, I'm no runner by any means, but like to be able to just suck it up with shin splints and, figure out a way to smuggle ibuprofen and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Like, you find a way, if you really want it, like, you're gonna find a way to freaking do it.
Like tenacity definitely builds that work ethic, that character of never quit. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so you get through boot camp, and you're talking about, what is this, 05, 06?
Yeah, so this was 2004. So July 2004 to, what would that be, October? So I get out, go on boot leave, and then come back to California I was a Hollywood Marine, so I come back to California for SOI, and do all that, and then I head out to Chesapeake, Virginia for Security Forces School.
Yep.
SOI, School of Infantry, and Security Forces School. Those are actually, like, I really enjoyed the training, and those you learn a lot, and as a lot of others will say the same thing. You get to a new training, you get to your duty station, they all tell you the same thing. Forget everything you learned. We're going to teach you and build you up the right way and all that. So there's a lot of that, but still you you get your takeaways from the leaders you've worked with, the other Marines you served with, and all that, and you kind of just start to formulate your own mental landscape for how you're gonna interact with the Marine Corps from that. So
Yeah, I think
eventually,
that's a good way to put it, because I talk about a lot. There's things you can learn from bad leaders too. So
100%.
you're going to learn goods and you're going to learn bads, and then, like you said, you can put those up in your little repertoire and bad, good.
Yep.
So it's not always like a net negative if you have a bad leader, or if you had a bad leader for a couple of years, because you are learning, just not the way you want to, would learn from a good leader.
Right.
Anyway, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, you're totally cool. So after security forces school, I made my way out to Bangor, Washington, and would spend a year and some change, maybe a little less, I don't know. But I would eventually get kicked out of there. I had a roommate. Yeah, I got booted out. Well, not really booted out. I just got booted out of the platoon. Had my clearance pulled. It was a alcohol related incident that I wasn't even involved in, but it involved my roommate, who is still one of my best friends to this day. And I just, all the people involved were underage and I was of age, so it was like,
your fault.
Well, here we go. Like,
Yep.
Let's just do this. Like, I'm gonna cover for him. He's my best bud, and fell on the sword.
Now, did they bust you down, or?
No, I just got. I think everyone knew what was happening. I think the only one who didn't really know was our CO of our platoon, and he got pissed when I was standing in front of him. It was just an ass chewing, the classic ass chewing. Just I'm just standing at attention, and eventually let me go to parade rest. So I'm just at parade rest going, aye sir, no sir, yes sir, just getting the royal treatment, man. And the ending of it was, so you really expect me to believe that you drank 100 and whatever beers, 16 bottles of liquor, all by yourself? Yes sir. Get the fuck out of my office. Aye, sir.
I broke the dam. Hell yeah.
Yeah, so I'd get sent down to work for the guard chief, and kind of, I don't know, I was just a data input dork for a while, but I was put on restriction, NJP'd, all that stuff. I didn't lose rank. I lost some pay and all that, whatever. But it kind of was a good self-development time, because I was already a big gym rat, but that just pushed me even more into the gym. And the guy I went to work for was awesome. He was a gunny, and he was just getting ready to leave Washington to go on leave, and then his next duty station, that would be his last tour of enlistment. So it was his twilight tour. So so I'm down there for a few weeks, and I'm just sitting at the desk doing whatever the hell it was I was doing. And he comes in the office, pokes his head in, and he's like, Prewitt. He's like, hey man, I know you feel like you're just spinning your wheels here. You want the hell out. Like, I'll get you orders. Where do you want to go? I was like, just thinking as fast as I can. I just had a buddy who left Washington and went to 1-6. So I was just like, let's go to 1-6. And he's like, are you sure?
You didn't know.
Yes, Gunny. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, he's like, all right, roger that. So a week, maybe not even that long, I got my orders. A week after that, I was in my car driving across the country. So yeah, I would call my buddy up, and I'd be like, dude, I got orders. Sweet, where are you going? 1-6. No, like, you don't want to go there. Like, we just found out, like, we're pretty sure we're going to Ramadi, and like, oh, well, what's a Ramadi? And you look up Ramadi on the old school sources like Live Leak and all that stuff, and it was just a couple couple of the first videos I would see would be that video of the dump truck going into, I think it was OPVA, just right in the middle of Ramadi, and it was just like, oh, like this is something different.
Now, what were the what were your emotions about that? Was it like you're pumped up, or was it, oh shit, what, you know, like what's the psyche there?
It was mostly pumped up. The gung ho motivated Marine was still very much alive in me at that time. So it was kind of like an oh shit, but at the same time, it's I finally am getting into the position to be able to actually do what I signed up to do. So there was like a lot of fuel, excitement, finally getting the hell out of Washington, and the hell that is, you know, purgatory for grunts is what I call security forces. Like,
yeah, if you're at a PRP command, there's probably a lot of truth to it.
Yeah. I mean, I knew too many guys who landed in Washington and never left, and they're staff sergeants. And it's just like, no, I want out of here with a quickness. I kind of got blessed in a way by getting in trouble and all that. It worked out for me in the end. I got what I wanted, but that's not always a good thing. You know, be careful what you wish for, that type of thing. And I wanted it. I wanted to experience combat. I wanted to go, you know, figure out and answer the questions I had from my grandpa and all that. And boy,
yeah, soon you'd find out.
We got it. We got it. Yeah.
Before I go to the book, I'd like you to kind of set the audience up. I'm gonna skip through to about chapter 16 or so before I talk about it. So if you can just set up the dynamic with where you fall in your squad, platoon, company. How about let's start there in the beginning, kind of before you push Ramadi, and then we'll talk about the initial, the initial September going through, and then we'll kind of get into the souk and some of the other stuff.
Okay. All right. So the Battle of Ramadi, according to historians, started in the spring of 2006 or early spring of 2006 and lasted through the fall of that same year. We got there in September, so kind of right in the middle of the battle. We relieved 3rd Battalion, 8th Marines, and our first stop was in a spot called OP Huraya. So Ramadi is a city of about 500,000 people. I think it's about 30 miles west of Fallujah. Kind of, it's the westernmost part of the Sunni Triangle of Death, and it was Al Qaeda in Iraq's next big target. So Fallujah was the original. And many people probably know this already, but I'll just hit it real quick. The second Battle of Fallujah was in my eyes, it was a great success militarily. We went in there and just, the Marines, the Army, they did the damn thing. They got it done. It also, kind of like you were saying, we bring all of our tactics, and we have guys going to ITB and School of Infantry and doing all that stuff that have experienced war. They bring what they learned, they start teaching it to the future generation. Well, our enemies do the same damn thing. So they took everything, the survivors, they took whatever was left from Fallujah and brought everything into Ramadi and began to build that up to be the new caliphate for what Musab al-Zarqawi wanted to implement in the Middle East, which was a new Islamic state. So the caliphate would be the capital of this new Islamic state, which would eventually become what everybody knows better as ISIS. So
check. Now, if we back up, I just want to understand squad dynamics prior to leaving. So you call your buddy, you say, hey, I'm coming to 1-6, I'm coming to see you. It'll be awesome. And he says, no, we just found out we're about to do a main push. But you still come. You're on the way across the country. So work me through checking into 1-6 and where you get slotted.
Okay.
Kind of some of the squad or team members that you're running with, that you're close with there.
Sure. So because of my buddy, my reputation preceded me coming to the unit, which I thought was going to be a wildly negative thing because it's an NJP, and it actually, again, this worked out to my benefit. And infantry culture is not typical. I had gotten in trouble, but it wasn't at their unit. It involved alcohol, which a lot of them could resonate with because, let's be honest, 6 Marines as a whole kind of had or still has a drinking problem. I don't know about today, but back in the day,
the Marines as a whole, but yeah, 6 Marines for sure.
True, very true. So coming in with those under my belt, or notches on my belt, whatever, kind of put me in this, oddly enough, a positive light, and kind of made it to where my buddy who was in Charlie Company, he told his squad leader told our platoon commander, and they were just kind of like, all right, like bring him in, like let's see where he ends up. So
Right.
I did the whole check-in thing, went and met with Sergeant Major. He must have gotten wind of something because he didn't hesitate. He's like, you're going to Charlie Company. Like, all right, good to go. Went downstairs, checked in with First Sergeant. First Sergeant's like, welcome, blah, blah, blah. Go check in with Second Platoon. I go over to Second Platoon, and I'm still in the service alphas, my Gumby suit is what I call it. And so, like I had said, I'd been hitting the gym hard because of restriction, being in trouble. There's nothing better to do but hit the gym. So I had put on a lot of size, and my service alphas were screaming just to be let undone. So it wasn't the most flattering look. So I go over to Second Platoon's desk, and the squad leaders are sitting behind the desk, and they're just like, who the hell are you? And I'm like, Lance Corporal Prewitt, I'm checking in, just got to the unit. And they're like, oh, you're that guy. I'm like,
Uh-oh.
what guy? And they're like, you got in some trouble, didn't you? And I was just like, yes, Sergeant, I got in trouble for alcohol back in Washington. And they're like, kind of like kind of poo-poo. And they're like, that is fucking awesome, man. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm picking up here, like,
Sweet.
all right, like they're not pissed off about that.
Yeah.
And then one of the other dudes, I think it was my buddy Goose, and he's just like, this fat fuck. And I was like, oh man, like.
No,
So
were you like overweight, or was it just because you had put muscle on though?
I just put on so much muscle.
I gotcha.
Just. Yeah,
You need a little altercation, man. You need a little altering.
I did not get altercations done.
Alterations, not altercations.
Dude, like, you never wear that damn service uniform anyways, and, like checking in, and that's about it.
You'll be fine.
So they tell me to go change into camis, and it's summertime, so I go change. It's short sleeves. I had a full sleeve and some other tattoos, and I come back down, and I go back to Second Platoon's desk, and I'm standing in front of them, and they're still, I think there's like one different dude, but a couple of the same guys are still there, and they're all just like, who are you? Like, why are you standing here? I'm like, I'm Lance Corporal Prewitt. I just went and changed, and you told me to come back. And they're just like, holy shit. Like, you're like, we thought you were fat. I was just like, yeah, the uniform doesn't fit me right. So
Yeah.
So they start grilling me about, like, what are you good at? Have you ever carried the saw? Like this, that, and the other thing, trying to feel me out with what I've had experience with. And then Sergeant Peel, Grandpa, we called him. He pulls out my record, and it must have had my rifle score somewhere in there. And he's like, then this was like on the old scoring method.
Yep.
And it was I think it was at a 55 was the old one.
I can't. You're bad brain, man. I can't
I
remember.
don't even remember. But I had shot range high for my group, my platoon from security forces that I went with, and I think it was a 52 or something. So
Okay.
they were like, "Dude, you shot a 52?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Sergeant." And before I knew it, they were like telling me this new word called a designated marksman, and I'm like, "What's that?" And they're like, "The designated marksman's a fake ass sniper." And I was like, "Sounds cool." So basically, it's just I had a kind of like a 3-day in-house like DM school type of thing. They gave me the SAMR, which is Squad Advanced Marksmanship Rifle, and it's an M16 with a loophole hunting scope on it. It has bipods, a free floating barrel that you're only supposed to shoot this match grade ammo out of.
Yep.
And
Barrier rounds, right?
What's that?
You shoot the barrier rounds, the match grade barrier rounds out of that.
Yep.
Yeah, they're
So
good. That's good. That's good shit.
yeah, no, that was awesome. Like, got a bunch of trigger time with it, and yeah, I got sent to a law school. That was cool.
What'd you do in a law school?
Just shooting laws.
Oh,
Like
okay.
they had like these little like dummy rockets, like a freaking bottle rocket type thing, just inert.
Little training
Just
rounds.
trying to shoot. Yep, just training round type of thing. And then I wouldn't actually get to shoot a real rocket until Ramadi, but
I'm a big fan of the law myself.
oh hell yeah, dude!
It worked.
Like,
It worked for me on multiple occasions.
very versatile.
Very
that rocket
versatile. Yes,
system.
yes.
Yeah,
yes.
and it's lightweight and compact. I
Oh
love
yeah.
it.
Oddly enough, that's one of the parts that I'm gonna read, if you don't mind, later, is kind of about the law situation when the rooftop
Hell yeah, man.
was wild. So
Yeah.
So okay, and so you're in second platoon. So you
Yep.
get the DM and you fall into what team?
I fall into Grandpa's squad, so I'm in first squad. Technically, I'm in second team, but because I'm the DM, I was kind of given the freedom to float around if I had to go to another squad to help them with like Overwatch or something like that. I did that, but it really wouldn't happen that much. Honestly, I didn't really like leaving my squad.
Sure.
We all became like. I'm sure you become very close with those guys, and
Especially in a fight like that, when you're talking about a squad fight primarily, and sometimes you might go out with same thing for us in Marja. You might go on a concerted effort, on a mission that takes squad plus or maybe a platoon minus. But that for us was very few and far between. If you wanted, like, there were some helo raids that some bigger bodies went on and such, but for the most part it was you and your squad. And my time in Iraq was very much the same way. You had your squad, you guys had your own squad battle rhythm, and so I know I talk about it in my book. There's a little, in your book, you can feel it. I don't know if you ever said it directly, but when you're in a fight like that, anytime that you get to meet up with the other squads, even though you may not want to operate with them, you still have friends in those other squads. And even though you're a click down the road from them, when there's fighting like that, you're worried about like your friends in these other squads. And so then when you would see them, even though in a squad fight, like we're saying, it's few and far between times when you may even get the opportunity to have fellowship or eat a meal or, even, share a hug. Those times are cherished times when you're in a squad fight. But that squad, it becomes everything. The squad is everything in that kind of fight. So yeah,
Absolutely.
very, very, very relatable. Not for me, for anybody in the GWAT era, that's relatable because the entire GWAT was that way. Okay. And so build up for me, how much training time or workup time did you get since you were coming after the fact 216?
Good question. So I got really, really lucky. I got there 3 days before they left for CAX. So got there, got the check-in all done, got my my stuff from SIF, got my gear sorted, went out in town and bought a bunch of stuff because our gear sucks when we get it. And 3 days later, after arriving at North Carolina, we're on a plane to 29 Palms, California. and did 30 days at the training out there. And that, I mean, talk about blessings, man. Like, to be able to have been there for that, you know, I was able to really get to know the guys in my squad. They all got to know me. We all got in huge trouble because we had a jungle juice party that we got we got busted, and kind of all, you know, we all drank together, we all got punished together, type of thing.
Yeah, you suffer together, you grow close when you suffer.
Yeah, exactly. So just the bond in second platoon was I can't say it was unique, but it was special in a way that there's so many of us that still to this day, and I mean almost daily contact with some of them. And I know that other guys have their own groups, and everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and I love it. I love seeing all that stuff.
It's great.
It's important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
For sure.
So after CAX,
now one thing about CAX, you said you got a lot of trigger time on the DM rifle. Was that during CAX that you got to?
No.
Okay, so you had to go to CAX first, and then afterwards you got some trigger time on the rifle.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So after CAX was actually when I would get my DM rifle and do that in-house thing and all that.
Okay, gotcha.
But I was slated to get it upon return or whatever, because it was a timing thing. Like,
no worries. I just didn't know if you went straight out to CAX with it without training.
I wish I would have.
Or
yeah. I mean, I guess if there's one kind of like regret or something I wish was different, that would have been to have the DM rifle with me at CAX.
And actually be operating in that combined arms dilemma with the rifle that you're taking. But you know, and then it's like, we're going to give this new kid, he's good with the rifle. And it's like, we're leaving for CAX in 3 days. How is that even going to be possible? So like, I get that side of it as far as logistical, and Marine Corps makes sense. And I probably would have done the same thing. So in CAX, you're running in second squad, second team, you said?
Yep. Or first squad, second team.
First squad, second team. Okay.
Yep. So,
okay, check.
Yep. So we're at CAX, and great training, got to know the guys, and from there we head back to North Carolina. We have like a couple more stops at one of the mountain towns out there, so military operations on urban terrain, and we kind of start doing like a lot of night patrols using our NVGs, and that's kind of when they started to tell us, like, we're going to be working a lot at night. We're going to try to avoid the daytime, because every time a unit leaves the wire, it's within minutes that they're attacked, ambushed. There's IEDs all the time. So really started to work on that type of thing. And during those maneuvers, I was able to get that trigger time in on the DM rifle, the SAMR.
Check. Now, when you guys are when you're getting that kind of information as a junior Marine, that where you're going is hot, this is why we're doing this kind of training, and you already have seen that they've got V-bids, they've got chest rigs, they've got bad dudes that want to fight. What is it still pumped up the closer you get to this, or is it focus? Because in my experience, it was focus. It was, okay, I know this is projected to be bad. It's time to get your shit tight. Focus. There's no time to fuck around. You know, there's no time to. Was that more of the mentality going forward from CAX?
So kind of going back to that, just that Marine Corps dynamic of brotherhood. We had kind of like just this impromptu squad meeting out at CAX. Is during that. At the end of CAX, you do this, like, I think it's like a 3-day evolution where it's you're actually living life in the wire, or as much as they can notionally do that. So sometime within that, we got back from like this night patrol, and Grandpa brings us all together. We're out back outside of our hooch, and he's just like, who's scared? And typical Marines, none of us really said anything. And this is kind of why, I mean, losing anyone sucks. Like, God, of course. But, as you'll learn, and it's not like I'm spoiling anything here, but McCon, this is why he was so special to us and such a part of us, was because Grandpa asked who's scared, and no one says anything. And McCon, probably the most junior Marine in our squad, the youngest, pipes up and he's like, I'm scared shitless. And I mean, tears in his eyes, and we're all just kind of like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, me too. Like, all of us, like, kind of eventually one by one was just like, yeah, we're all terrified. And Grandpa, he's what I would call a good leader. Like, he was hard. He was difficult to get along with at sometimes, but when it comes down to it, I mean, he brought us together, and that was one of those times. Like, ask that question, we all kind of roger up in our own way. McCon started it, and just whatever happened after that, and I can't really exactly remember what was said, but it was just one of those things like, we're all feeling the same thing. We're all in this together, and we're all going to be there for each other. And no matter what happens, we're always going to have each other. We know we're Marines, we're killers. We're going to go do our job, and we're going to do everything we can to bring all of us home. And obviously, as we'll get into it and all that, but McCon didn't come home with us. And that was one of those moments. And I think this is kind of just something special for right now, because I don't think I included that in the book, because maybe I should have, but that piece of our relationship, that always was kind of like that conversation with my grandpa, that stuck with me. Like, him being able to be just the most junior guy and to speak up in a group of just dudes who are just training to go to the pinnacle of combat of the GWAT, and just to have him kind of show his balls by speaking up, kind of gave us all just like this boost, this, we're all feeling the same thing, but we got each other's backs, and we're going to do this.
Yeah. And so I would say
kind of circling back to the focus.
Yep.
Like, it kind of put us like zeroing in on,
well, say it out loud. When you say out loud, yeah, I'm scared. That's okay. That's what I tell my guys. Yeah, you should be scared. Hell, you should be. I don't. This isn't like a walk in the park. Even though I enjoy it, there's a level of fear and anxious and anxiety and just fear. Like, you're going to go walk on a piece of ground, and people are going to hunt you. So there's a level of that. But when it pays its dividends is when that fear and that anxiety turn into focus to ensure that everything that could possibly be done to raise the propensity of winning this engagement is done. Then that becomes that focus and not even arrogance, but that confidence. Like, yeah, I know you're afraid. I know you're scared, but I know what we have as a squad right here, and we're going to be fine.
Yep.
And then there's war. You could be the best war fighter that there is, and the enemy still gets a choice. They still get a decision.
Yep.
And so if you're not a little bit scared going into combat, that probably means you're a psychopath, and that's fine too. I'm not even mad at you. We need those too. But most people are scared, and voicing it and then being, I'm scared, but I'm ready, and we're going to get ready. And that's the way it should be. And that's that surge. I would imagine, where that surge of focus and like even added commitment, like, and we should be scared. So it's time to get straight down to brass tacks here.
Yep.
Roger that. And so when that conversation with Grandpa happens, how much before pushing is that? How long before you guys depart U.S. soil is that conversation?
So that was still at CAC. So that was the end of June of 2006, and we wouldn't. We flew out of North Carolina on September 11th. So kind of,
Some
an
poetic
emotional
justice right there.
burrito there. Yeah. So we flew out on September 11th, flew into Bangor, Maine, and I mean, you talk about a hard hit on a house. We hard hit that bar and completely just. We were walking away with trays of shots of tequila before our sergeant major could get in there and be like, "Yeah, 2 drinks per Marine." And we're just like, yeah, "We have like 30."
Yeah. 2 trays.
So
You
I
got
don't
2
remember.
trays.
Oh man, dude, I don't remember getting back on the plane. Like it was just completely, yeah. So I wake up somewhere over the Atlantic, and we land in Ramstein, Germany, are there for a couple hours while they refuel. Then we take off to Kuwait. We get into Kuwait. We load up on buses, and then that's actually where I started to discover the joys of chewing tobacco because we couldn't get off the bus to smoke. So I started chewing. That was my start and wouldn't end. And so we from
Got 'em.
there. Yep, we got him. So from there we went to TQ Al-Taqatum, a big air base in the middle of Iraq, and we might have been there a night. I don't even remember staying there, but at some point, very soon after we arrived, we loaded up on helos and flew into Camp Ramadi. And again, in the dead of night, we flew in, and I sat kind of towards the rear of the helicopter, and they had the tailgate drop so I could look out and see the city beneath. And, sure as shit, we're flying over and tracers going across, and it's just like, okay, like it's legit. Like we didn't get shot at or nothing. I don't want to make it sound more intense than it was. It was just seeing a freaking laser going across the city. Like we became very accustomed to getting shot at and tracers and all that. It kind of just became normal for us after some point.
Yeah.
So we get into Camp Ramadi. Nothing happens. We get off the helos, go into like a giant tent squad bay thing there, and our whole company's in there.
Like a GP tent, just like for
Yeah,
holding.
just huge, like giant ass circus tent, could fit like a herd of elephants in there. And and like good Marines do, we got bored, and so one of our Marines, busted out his scrotum, doused it in hand sanitizer, and lit it on fire for all of us to be like, "What is wrong with you?" So we had our first cash. No, I'm just kidding. So we're at Camp Ramadi for a few days. They do we go through like this IED course with some Australian dudes and get to meet some Aussies. So that was cool. We had like an orientation briefing with a major. He was like kind of just this like Jack Black dude, like little like Wesley Snipes type guy. And everyone knew him because he did the same thing. Like he had this great attention grabber. He'd pull out a chair in front of us. All of us would be yucking it up and still like talking about like, "Oh, this is gonna be awesome," and blah blah. And he stands up on the chair and does a backflip off of it, and we're all just like, "All right, like you have our attention." So this dude goes into of course, death by PowerPoint. He's an officer. It's what they do. So we go into this PowerPoint. He's showing us all these things like the frequency of attacks and all this, and it was like depicted in like these red circles, orange circles, and the worse it got, the bigger the circle was. So he's going through it, and we're all just glued into the part of the map because we kind of had an idea of where we're going, and all of the spots that we're at are just these giant circles, and we're just like,
fuck,
okay, like, roger that, sir. So we find out that we're going to be going to OP Harea. Oh, and this is kind of something I wanted to set up. So Ramadi, city of 500,000 people, pretty, I mean, built on top of each other. Just the
Stacked.
center of the city, yeah, just stacked, short, tiny little alleys. And there's a main drag that goes through the whole city, going east to west, separates it north to south, and that's called Route Michigan.
Yep.
So Michigan goes from basically right out the gate of Hurricane Point. You can get on Michigan, and it just doesn't stop. So Hurricane Point is on the west side of the city, and in between Blue Diamond to the north, which is a huge Army forward operating base, and then another forward operating base to the south called Camp Ramadi, and that's where we flew into originally. So the Marines stayed at Hurricane Point, and then Army was Camp Ramadi and Blue Diamond. So Blue Diamond was mostly used for training like Iraqi police, I believe. So that would actually, that's a pretty big part of the story, but don't want to get too far ahead. So we have that stuff on the western side of the city, kind of a safer side of the city. Once you get past, I think it's checkpoint 295 or 294. The city kind of got better. There's still a threat of IEDs, but once you pass 294 or 295, that was when it was like the butt pucker factor just went to 3 million. So along Route Michigan, you would hit those checkpoints. You would hit OPVA first. That would be the westernmost outpost. And then you would hit the government center. So the government center would house an entire company of Marines, and their sole purpose was to keep one man alive, the governor of the Al Anbar province. So Ramadi was the capital of that province, kind of the biggest, maybe the biggest city in the province. Yeah, because Baghdad's not part of that. So yeah, so it's bigger than Fallujah. It's bigger than Al-Qaim, Haditha, all that stuff. And so from the government center, you go down about a half mile east, and you have Opi Huraya. Opi Huraya was a 3-story building and allegedly used to be a morgue. Behind it was this giant graveyard. So I don't know, the pieces kind of fit, but
absolutely.
But this place was, if I had to name one of the outposts in Ramadi, the Alamo, it would probably be this one, or the one that I'll get to here in a minute, which would be Opi Utli. Opi Huraya was the biggest of those dots. It sits directly across from the part of the city called the souk, which kind of makes like this trapezoid figure. So Route Michigan would be my thumbs, and then this road called Racetrack would go up and around it and then reconnect at Michigan over on the east side. In between all that was the souk, or marketplace in Arabic. And this was, I mean, you think of Rio de Janeiro shanty towns, just picture that with concrete. And that it was just a hell of a landscape to fight in. So basically at that time, AQI had free reign in, I mean, just giant swaths of the city. They could move and do whatever they wanted, unseen, untouched. They could move in on us, and as we'd find out, I mean, 360 degrees, we wouldn't have a clue anybody was there until they started shooting at us, and it was just like, holy shit, like, this is insane. So that's kind of the basic setup. And then we had one other outpost up to the north by the hospital, and that would be Opi Hawk.
Opi Hawk,
so,
check. Gotcha. And this first part that I'm going to read is just a little, it's going to be right there in chapter 2, Opi Hawk. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. You guys are going to have to get the book to get the rest. An explosion ripped through the outpost of Opi Hawk, waking me up. Rude awakenings were a common occurrence in the Marine Corps. Starting out in boot camp, we were woken up whenever the drill instructors felt like making our lives hell. Extreme training is required for the extremes found in combat. Footsteps outside our platoon room went from the sprinkle to a steady trickle after the blast concussion vibrated through the outpost. "Get up," I said to no one in particular. A bad feeling in my gut had thrown me into action. I began to dress as the gunfire ripped the air outside. "What the hell?" Cock, my team leader, asked me. Although I was a corporal and outranked Cock, a lance corporal, he had a deployment to Fallujah while I had a short stint in security forces. It only makes sense for someone who's gone through combat deployment to have first dibs on a leadership position within an infantry squad that consists of 12 Marines, 1 corpsman, and 1 squad leader. In our case, we had 9 Marines, 1 corpsman, and a squad leader. The rest of our battalion was outfitted the same. To put it bluntly, we were understaffed. Even though it was an all-volunteer fighting force and American pride behind us, recruiting during the time of the war wasn't what it was back in the World War II era. Had to be an IED, and now this, I said, waving my hands in a frantic circle in the air, as if that sufficiently explained the gunfire. An IED, an improvised explosive device. Now, when you start talking about OP Hawk right here, you've already gotten out to OP Hawk. Is OP Hawk a squad OP? Is it a platoon OP? How big is the OP out there?
So it's one of the bigger ones that we had. Outside of the government center, it'd probably be the next biggest one that we had inside of the city. So OP Hawk was one of Saddam's palaces.
Okay.
So we took it over, converted it into living areas. So it could hold probably up to, it could hold 2 platoons at the same time. There was also a living area for Iraqi police and a living area for Iraqi army. So it was it wasn't huge by any means, but for being in that part of the city, it was substantial in size.
Check. And so your whole squad's there?
Oh yeah, our whole platoon's there, and I think we were there with first platoon, if I remember correctly.
Okay, check. So the whole platoon. You got Grandpa Prewitt. Grandpa, our squad leader, shouted from the top of the stairs that led to the roof. We had 5 posts rattling away with 240 Golfs and a 50 cal machine gun. We called him Grandpa because he was 25 years old with more gray hair than Jay Leno. The Marines age well beyond your years. "Yo," I responded. "Get the fuck outside." "Roger that," I shouted as I wheeled around towards the exit to exit through the former kitchen turned swole center, complete with a chunky treadmill, bench press, and a gaggle of random dumbbells. I passed through the smoke pit after entering the infernal heat at 08:30 in the morning and zipped past the outer wall towards the sound of gunfire. Streams of sweat poured down my face. Now, so I don't have to read the entire situation, kind of prop up this engagement right here. And I also don't want to read it because I don't want to read the whole book. I want you guys to go out and get this book. It's a phenomenal read, especially if you're a junior Marine. Even if you're a seasoned Marine, there are things that you will read in this book that will shock you because it's stuff you're trained already on. And at the time, these guys just didn't have it. We didn't have it early in the war. So yeah, just kind of build up this IED and this ambush for the audience.
All right, so an IED had gone off on a vehicle that was coming through our serpentine that we had set up. So a serpentine barrier of jersey barriers, so those short little concrete guys. So one was in front, one kind of in the middle off to the other side, and then one more behind it. So you got to zigzag through. So in the middle of that, houses line the street to the side of it over here. So to the south of the street. And somebody was able to push out an IED from inside of the house into the middle of that serpentine, and they had to have done it that morning because they knew a convoy left early in the morning, and they knew they would be coming back the same way because that's the only way coming back into OP Hawk. And when they came back in, the lead vehicle was hit. Immediately, the buildings off to the side, they already had guys staged with machine guns, AKs. They started opening up on the convoy. And this is where our corpsman, Gary, dude made a Medal of Honor run from the rear of the convoy through gunfire to get up to the lead vehicle to start helping the casualty, Utley, who would eventually lose a leg from this. So they were able to get the vehicle out of the way, push it out of the way, get everybody else loaded up into the other vehicles, and then go the 50 meters, 50 freaking meters from OP Hawk, and get the vehicles turned around. So by the time those vehicles get turned around, I was told to go run to like a far wall. So we're running through gunfire to this wall. Then we're told to come back. So I instead of just running out in the open, I just kind of duck into where all these spare gun trucks, and I think there's a 7-ton or 2 parked over there as well. So I'm kind of zigzagging through the armored vehicles, and I get back up to where I see these vehicles, or the gun trucks being turned around, who were on that convoy. And as soon as I pop my head out from the vehicles, Grandpa's, I don't know how this dude just zeroes in on me all the time, but he's like, we need you to drive the high back. I'm like, so I'm going from like, I'm going to go shoot some dudes to I'm driving the high back now. Okay. All right. Never know what to expect. So just always trying to semper gumby, right? Always flexible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm told to drive the high back, and I look at the high back, I go behind it, I look in, and I really wish I didn't, because I still just thinking about it now, I still just see Utley's mangled leg, the bone, and just like, this is our first casualty, and just to have it happen so damn close, and to one of our own, and man, so I go.
So Utley's not in there
the
anymore, or is Utley in there still?
Utley's in the back of the high back now.
In the back, yeah.
So
okay.
yeah. So him and Gary loaded up into the high back after the initial. Once they got the the gun truck that was hit by the IED, they push it out of the kill zone off to the side, and then they loaded up.
Gotcha. Check.
So they had come in, turned around. So the rear vehicle of the convoy is now the lead truck. The high back still in the middle, and then as we're waiting for the third gun truck to get spun up and get behind us, I get to the other side of the high back after looking in there, and I look to my left, and there's a Marine off to the side just chucking into the moon dust, just spewing chunks. And then I was like, that must have been the driver. So it's fitting why they needed me to drive the high back. So I get in the high back, and one of the team leaders from 3rd Squad is in there. He's one of my buddies. We called him Bam Bam. And he is, we called him Bam Bam for this reason. He is just unhinged. Just like, we need to go, like, just punching everything he can. And I'm like, bro, like, I can't do anything until this gun truck in front of me moves. Like, we can't do shit until this happens. So,
and now, are they pouring it on you still
I
at this
say,
point? Like, as far as rounds, are you like the ambush is in full swing right now, right?
Oh, it's a full raging firefight. Like,
and what was the purpose of the gun trucks turning around to get out of there?
Well, we had to come back. So yeah, we have to medevac Utley. This dude, he's losing blood even with the tourniquet on.
Check. I didn't know if they had some sort of aid station at OP Hawk or not.
Not what he needed.
Check.
We had our the head guy of the BAS for 1-6 was there, but
he needed a higher echelon of care for sure. Yeah, gotcha.
Yep. Yeah, he had to get medevac for sure. So being that close to the outpost, it was just let's go back in, regroup, reorganize, get the gun truck set up, get that third gun truck so we have somebody covering the high back's ass.
Yeah.
Eventually, who knows how much time has passed with Bam Bam punching the dash. And
now, are the gunners on these trucks opening up as well?
Not yet. They're in kind of like a defilade because of where they are in the outpost. So, they're taking fire from. So they would be shooting from the east to west at us, and then we were shooting back kind of west to east at them. And from where they were in the buildings, they were more focused on the posts that we're shooting, and because nobody else was running to the wall anymore, so there were no Marines like out in the open.
Mm-hmm.
So it was mostly just the posts on the roof that were duking it out with the insurgents.
And those were 240s, right?
Yeah, so I think they're on the back side or on that side of OP Hawk. we had a couple 240s and a 50, and then like most outposts, especially in Iraq, we built like little portals like all along the wall, so we could, sandbags around it. You just post up in a portal and start jamming. So Marines were doing that too. So we had saws pumping, M16s, 203s. Rockets would follow for sure. But
now, when you looked in and seen the damage to Utley and seeing that he was fucked up, I can tell that you taking some deep breaths right there. I can imagine it was a mangled mess. Did he just take the brunt of the IED on his side? Is that how that went down? So it got deaded and it was right under him.
Yeah, I think it was kind of it was one of those. I don't know if it would be technically a shape charge, but I think it was like one of those coffee can IEDs where it just kind of shoots straight up, punches a giant hole through the vehicle, and it came right up under his side.
Check. And so you look in, you see, probably something you hadn't seen to that point in your life as far as the mess is concerned. Now, it was his leg still intact at the time?
No.
Okay, check. So it blew it completely off of him. All right, cool. And not cool, but just so I can understand, I assume that people went into action in the back of that high back and started getting tourniquets wrapped up and trying to stabilize that situation. Okay, cool.
I mean, Gary was, like I said, man, Medal of Honor run. I mean, that dude ran under gunfire. He did his best to shoot back, but we all know Corman. And but he got the Utley, he got him out. He started, saying, we need to get him in the high back. He kind of took over in a sense, just be like, this is what we need to do. And
that's what a good corpsman's supposed to do. Like, absolutely.
Damn right. Yep. So, he's doing what he can. He's got, the morphine, all that jazz. He's stabilizing him as best as we can. And then, eventually that gun truck in front of me just pulls out and it's just like, all right, here we go. So kind of circling back to like when I first saw Utley, it was just kind of one of those things that you see, that I can't deal with this right now. So it was one of those things that was just.
Do you mean by that when you say that quote, I can't deal with this right now, do you mean that's the Marine in you that's in work saying right now is not the time to emotionally spend emotional equity there and compartmentalize that? Okay, check.
Yep, it was definitely a compartmentalized thing because my focus was I got to drive this high back now.
Yep.
I can't let this affect me. I got to get this guy out of here because of what I just saw. But it was something that, and this is something I would come into a lot in this deployment, and even in Afghanistan. You just don't, in the moment, you don't have time to deal with it. You don't have time to grieve and to process anything. It's just you have to stay focused. You have to get on to the next thing because you don't know what that's going to bring. It was just always, we have to move forward because if we stop, we're probably going to die.
Now, the next question I have is, first of all, I agree with you. I think in my experience doing these interviews, the dynamic to me seems to shift for leadership a little bit. And that's no hit on anybody else, but your leadership must have been doing something for everybody to continue to follow. Am I wrong in that? As far as things are going bad, who's now driving this exfil? Who, like, is your leadership remaining calm and saying, hey, we got to push, this is what we're doing, okay, we're up? Or is that the junior Marines and the corpsmen kind of stepping up doing that?
Honestly, I wasn't in a position to, I have no idea. My only communication with leadership was when Grandpa told me to drive the high back.
Check. And so when he's telling you that the squad is doing what the squad is supposed to do to get that exfil going. So I'm assuming you know, I'm just from what you're saying, he's telling you what he needs from you. He's then telling other people what he needs from them. People are making it together, and now Xville's fixing to happen. Is that kind of what?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
check. And the reason I say that is, it's very interesting to me doing these interviews with different echelons of leadership throughout the ranks. It doesn't matter if it's Army or if it's Air Force. I've done some Air Force, SF guys, and then I've done some GP. I did GP Marines, SAW gunner. I've done M203 gunner from Marja, and it's interesting to me because the entire perspective of the war is different at the team leader level, then the squad leader level, then the platoon command level, and so on, right? But down at that level where your life is literally, and your actions are literally in the hands of your leadership, saying, hey, I need you to drive the high back. And what do you need to do as that Marine being told that? You need to get ready to drive the motherfucking high back. And you need to drive it as best as you can, or more people will die. And so to get to that compartmentalization, that might be part of your compartmentalization to say, I don't know what went on around me. I know that I was told to drive the high back and people around me were dying. So I was driving the high back. And that is the interesting, or almost it's almost cool to me to hear that from different guys, from yourself in this situation, because it would be a different story from that team leader. It would be a different story from that squad leader. From Grandpa's perspective, this whole story gets told differently. And that is what I think is important about the mental construct that we talk about when we talk about guys that have been to war. And they say, well, does it really affect everybody differently? Well, maybe you could say that, or maybe you could say that guy was in a different war than that guy, and he had different responsibilities delegated to him than that guy. So that guy experienced all this stuff you're talking about. This guy didn't experience all that stuff, but he did experience all of this stuff and the things that go with it. And so that's always I just keep saying it, I sound like a record, but it's always reassuring to that fact that war affects everybody differently. It's a different war for everybody. Especially at the different levels of leadership. Okay, so we can get back into it real quick. Sure. Once the guns are affixed, the gun trucks are affixed and in place, what happens next? I assume we get out of there.
Yeah, so we pull out. We're obviously we're hauling ass, going as fast as we can.
Oh yeah.
And we're going right back through the kill zone. So as you can guess, you asked were the gun trucks opening up, and as soon as he was around the corner of the gate and going down the road leading out, he starts jamming.
Just starts eating them up.
And I don't think that dude let off the trigger until we were past through the kill zone.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Fuck them. And the other question is that's probably got a lot to do with, you had a couple of posts that were opening fire and you got cover, and they're kind of running the fight. Now, when you guys going to come back across, you got to come back across the face of those guns, I would think, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're coming across the face of those guns, and those guns are going to have to shut down now, then those gun trucks are going to have to pick up that slack right on.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, so we're going through both the lead and rear gun trucks. They're both jamming. I think we lost the gun truck with the mark, so we had a 50 and a 240 hammering away. Wish we would have had the mark, but
right. They'll level it all with a mark.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going through, and it's, I've been shot out already, but mostly overhead or impacts the sandbags or walls around me. And this was one of those times where you could see the bullets ricocheting off the hood. A couple impacted directly in the windshield, like right in front of my head.
Good thing they're bulletproof, huh?
Yeah, dude. Thank God for bulletproof glass. It would save my life again later on. So I could see the dude. I couldn't see the dude. I could see the dude's muzzle flash just in the window, just blasting us. And we get through okay. Everyone gets through unscathed. and we were just flying down Sunset Road, heading southeast towards. We would end up getting to, I think it was Camp Corregidor, the outpost on the north side, and you can tell when someone's been there a long time doing the same thing, because as soon as we got close to the outpost, there were soldiers out there like waving us in like just this orderly fashion. Like the gun trucks go here. We know the casualties in the high back, so the high back's coming this way. So I'm following just this one guy, and I mean he's running towards like this hangar, and I'm following him, and he goes into the hangar. He's like, coming here, park here, and as soon as we get in there, there's this room off to the left-hand side of me, and it's got those thick sheets of plastic going over it, and the trauma team rolls out, and one of the biggest sighs of relief, just getting in there, throwing it in the park, and just kind of took my helmet off and just kind of rested my head on the steering wheel for a second. Bam Bam next to me, he opened his door, he started to get out. Somebody yelled at him like, stay back, like, don't get in the way of the trauma team coming out to the high back. And like, of course, like they need to do their job now. We got them here, we did our job, so now it's time to hand them off. And I open up my door, and I don't get out, I just sit there because I already heard Bam Bam get yelled at to stay. So I'm just sitting there and just feel the movement of the truck as they're getting Utley off, getting him on the gurney. And none of us really know what to think. Like, this is like I said, it was our first casualty in our battalion, and who knows what to expect. We just dude just had his leg blown off. But as he was being wheeled back towards those thick plastic sheets, he just, ever so slowly, just this one-fingered salute starts coming up. And we just see that, and it was just kind of like, all right, like that's kind of like the thumbs up sign to us. So we kind of just got a good feeling from that. Just like we got him out, he's gonna make it. Like, here we go. So,
that's a good feeling. It's a good feeling when they get out into the next echelon of care, and you got to handle it. Says, they're gonna make it. Now let's go fucking make them pay for that. Yeah,
exactly. So skipping a couple months ahead, we are part of this experiment called the Battalion Strike Force, and 2nd Platoon was kind of tasked with that. We kind of tended to do good at operations, so the battalion liked us, and we were going on this big clearance operation out of this newly built outpost called 17th Street Security Station, and that was kind of the first foothold that we had in the souk. So gotta do a huge shout out to any Apache Marines, Alpha Company fellas out there. Those dudes went through hell to get that built, and lost some good Marines along the way. So respect to those guys for doing the damn thing and getting it done.
Big shout out.
Oh yeah. So November 7th, we step off like we do any other night, middle of the night, 10, 11 o'clock, whatever it was, I don't remember. But we're about 5 minutes into the patrol, into our movement, to our objectives, and we had to, for whatever reason, there's a couple of different stories out there, but whatever the reason was, we had to double back, take a different route. It took us out to this intersection called Firecracker, which is a roundabout on this road called Racetrack. So we went out to Firecracker from a side street, and McCon and I, we're tailing Charlie in our squad. So a double columned formation, staggered formation. So he's on the right side, I'm on the left side, and we both take turns, walking backwards, checking our six and all that. So it was, I was just turning back around. I turned towards the inside of the column, and that was the last time I would see McCon. As I was turning, and then he just disappeared in this giant orange flash, and I'd get knocked out, I would come to within seconds. And at first you don't know what happens. Everything, I went from a crystal clear night. It was pretty chilly at this time of November at night in Iraq. It get below 35 and whatnot pretty regularly. So I woke up, I had a chew's not in my mouth anymore. Instead, it's just filled with sand. The whole area looks like we're engulfed in a sandstorm from all the moon dust and everything kicked up.
Mm-hmm.
And I look up and I just happen to see a Marine running through this cloud of dust. And I was just like, the only thought I had was get out of the kill zone. Like, you're in the kill zone and IED just went off. Like, that was all I was thinking. So I try to get up. I'm stumbling. I'm not okay. And I eventually get into some kind of a run, a trot. I just follow as best as I can that Marine that I saw. And I'm running across the intersection, and eventually I run into a Marine that's kneeling behind just the burnt out husk of a car, whether it was a SV bid or just some poor sap who hit an IED. So I see him, and I'm just like, all I could think of was like, where's Hancock or where's Hackett? One of the team leaders. And he just points behind him, and I just veer off to the right, and through the cloud dust I run into another couple of Marines kneeling beside a building. And one of them was Hackett, so I just collapse over by him, and he's all just like, dude, like, are you good? I'm just like, I'm here. I don't know. Like, I think I'm okay. And he's just, he Rogers up on the radio, like our little PRR personal radio receivers, that little earmuff thing that sits on. And he's just like, Rogers up. I got Prewitt. And we're just sitting there, and all of us are just kind of, we're not saying anything really. Just Hackett's kind of looking at me concerned, like, because I think I was just like kind of sitting there, like just doing one of these things, just wobbly.
Now, was this a complex ambush or just an IED strike?
Just an IED.
Okay.
Yeah.
So everybody's trying to hold security and kind of gather their wits about them.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're trying to get accountability at this point. That's Hackett was like, I got Prewitt, and it would be like another, I don't know how long, but it wouldn't be too long until Hackett just kind of like puts his fingers up to the headphone and just kind of like puts his head down. Then you can just kind of see his head just take another like dip, and he just kind of like looks back up and looks over at me, and all he said was, it was McCon. And from there we would watch second squad, who was coming behind us, and they came up, patrolled up to him, and a short little convoy came out so they could pick up his body and take him out. And it was again one of those times where there was no time for anything. We regrouped inside of a building near Firecracker, and that's when, I mean, if there's anything of like the start of the grieving process or something, it was in that building. I mean, I went in there, and that was the first time I had seen Gary, our corpsman, since that IED went off. And man, like, something you got to understand about our squad, McCon was, we're 3 days away from the Marine Corps birthday, right? And tradition is the youngest and the oldest Marine would cut the cake, or if I have that right.
Right.
McCon was the youngest Marine. He was kind of, in a way, kind of like a source of joy in our squad. He was always that guy who could get you to laugh. He was a boot, but he was a great Marine. Like, he knew his stuff. He was a mortarman by trade. Because of Ramadi, we needed 4 platoons of door kickers, not 3 platoons of door kickers and 1 platoon of just weapons guys. So we did a huge mix up, and he landed in 2nd platoon and in our squad, and just a tough loss. I mean, like I said, any tough is lost, but man, McCon just hit so much harder. Just a great human, you know.
Yeah. What does
so
that
we had
do?
to,
What does losing that person do to the morale and the kind of heartbeat of the squad and a team?
So this is kind of where I wouldn't say it was like it wasn't like a fear like based reaction, but there was definitely components of it that I definitely noticed after that, because when we regrouped in that building shortly after, and I saw Gary, and I mean, just talk about pure emotion and all that, like, you know, he's just beside himself, kind of just crying, and you know, I don't say anything. I just walk up to him right away, and I just hug him.
Yeah.
And then next thing we know, it's, hey, we're moving out, like, let's go, we got to go. So
did Gary try to work on McCon at all?
No.
There was no working.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so maybe he feels like he didn't have a chance to make that right. He didn't have a chance to do his job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
And I don't know if this is reaching for straws or survival guilt talking, but you know, I was thrown however far from that blast. Hancock, our team leader, he was thrown over a wall from the blast. He had to like run a block around and come back out to make it back out to us. And then, you know, we had another Marine evacuated from the blast, and then our LT, our platoon commander, his eardrums ruptured, so he's just bleeding from his ears. And but none of us took shrapnel. We just took the shockwave, and I, you know, you can't help but think these things, especially as much as I've thought of it and just reliving it over and over. But you know, McCon took the whole brunt of that. It was an anti-tank mine, rigged to blow from just the pressure of a human stepping on it. So, you know, he took that whole thing, and probably saved the rest of us from taking anything else. So, it's really, really tough.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But we got that order to move out, and once again, it was just, all right, we're just gonna have to deal with this a little bit later.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, that's something that's necessary, especially as a young Marine. It's necessary to, you know, not only compartmentalize, but there'll be time for that. And you know, I had to tell one of my Marines that was stuck after we lost our first Marine during the Marja invasion. You know, you never see a dead body. You have a tendency to, you know, maybe react one way or another, and this Marine, you know, reacted in a certain way, and you almost got to grab him and say, I know, and you know what, you got the rest of your life to think about this, but right here in this place where we're at now, you can't cry, because then you can't utilize your RCO, and if you can't utilize your RCO, then more people will die. So I need you to dry your face, and I need you to think about that shit later. And, you know, I said that at a time in 2010 when I didn't understand. I don't think I understood the gravity of even the advice I was giving. I knew it was the right advice. It was advice that had been given to me and in the past. But, you will think about that for the rest of your life. That's something that you and I sitting here, 15, 20 years post-event are sitting here talking about in a way that it makes your skin chill and it brings goosebumps up on your neck, and maybe it brings a little tear to your eye to think about those times. And it's true, but at that time, there's no room to unpack that. It's you start taking room to unpack that, then we're putting another friend in another bag and another friend in another bag. And so if you don't want to do that, then you need to compartmentalize. And so if you're a junior guy out there and you're on the cusp of training and you never know when the next war's coming, but that's the things that you can take from this episode. You can take that right there and tell your buddies, hey, there may come a time when we have to compartmentalize some of this information in order to save each other, and we need to have that in our brain housing group before it happens, because when it happens is not the time to try to do that. That's when guys get stuck. I think I learned a lot about psychology on that deployment, especially, just human psychology and psychology of guys in those dire situations. But we need to put the information out there continuously so guys don't think that something's wrong with them. It's like, no, you could be the baddest ass type A Marine out there. If you don't do this right, it will affect you negatively. And it's already going to affect you negatively. Anyway, that's my little tangent on that.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of tag on something at the end there. So you have to have that ability to compartmentalize, but I think something that we should, whether it becomes like a standard SOP throughout the Marine Corps, if it's just something that anyone listening to this can pick up and implement themselves, is we have to compartmentalize. We have to continue on with the mission to get it done so more people don't die. But at some point you have to come back and you're going to have to unpack that, and it's going to suck. You're not going to want to do it, but you need to do that before that shit starts unpacking itself in ways that you don't want it to.
It will unpack
itself. So if you want to be able to, it 100% will, and it's going to be a hell of a lot worse than you dealing it with on your own, with your own choices. So that would be the only thing that I would say. Just
absolutely a fact. You gotta reach out, and like a lot of us learned that the hard way. I think.
Yes.
A lot of guys from GWAT in general learned that the hard way. And, we're from a generation that grew up and the things you were told was don't talk about politics, don't talk about war, and don't talk about religion. And, I'm 37 now and I'm looking and I'm saying we should be talking about war, we should be talking about politics, and we should be talking about religion, because those are the three things that nobody fucking talks about. And it's the three things that are running us into the fucking ground now. So maybe talking about these things is, the answer. It's the medicine, rather than don't talk about it, repress it, constrain it, stow it away and pretend it never happened. No, it happened. It happened to us, or we happened to it, depending on how you want to look at it. All I'm getting at is it's not the time to try to unpack that when you're exchanging rounds with the enemy.
Exactly.
And you 100% have to unpack it.
People got to circle back and address it before it will address you.
100%.
If you don't address it first. So get the jump on it. Address your bullshit. All right.
Address your bullshit. That's right. No, I mean, it is. You could fuck around for 6 or 8 years like I did, not addressing shit, and let it address you if you want. And I hope you bear it, because it's not an easy road. Or you could take some advice from some guys who used to be cool and and realize that both of us had to address it. It addressed both of us in our lives, both medically, through our relationships, emotionally, financially, in my experience, because of things that I didn't do right, because I didn't address these things. And so now we're here, two guys that were in the depths of GWAT in two different countries, saying you must address this when you get home. You must. It's imperative that you do it, especially if you want to continue to serve, especially if you want to be a father, you want to be a husband. That means something. You want to keep that family element, because it will address you. And it does not have mercy. So address it, and then everybody can move the fuck on from it. You can become a dad. You can become that father and that spouse, that brother, that child that you needed. We'll get back to it now. I know that was a little tangent, but I think I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad we spent a little time on it, because because it is true. It is the way. It doesn't feel good, make you feel real weird. Talking about emotions as a type A personality, you know, it'll talk you come home and you feel like you're on top of the world. You got that combat, you got that thirst quenched a little bit. And then you start to realize that it came with things, you know, it came with things that even people told you it would come with, and you still wanted it. And now you have to, get through that. But, So definitely look, people know my story. It fucked me up losing Marines. I don't like losing Marines. I don't like losing friends. Nobody likes losing friends. And it will do something to the morale and the emotions of a team, squad, platoon. The hope would be that it does exactly what happened in the beginning in CAX and prior to your deployment, where things were refocused. Because now it's like it's real. When we lost Courier, it humbled everybody on the field that day. Like, no, you can be touched. And now we know that, but it's like, okay, now you know that. You can't go home. You can be touched, but now you focus. You measure twice and you cut once. And so is that the kind of emotion that it took for you guys when Macon went down?
So there was definitely a refocusing thing. I know, I mean, I can only speak for myself, really, but, you know, I was beyond angry. I was beyond angry with myself because, you know, I'm kind of putting myself into that, you know, I was a senior Marine, like, yeah, this is our first deployment together, but, you know, I'm 4 years older than him and I'm senior to him. And, you know, I just feel like some kind of responsibility. Like, what if I would have taken, you know, a couple more steps backwards and then turn, you know, give him those extra steps walking forward before he started to, or, you know, you start to think of all those things. And trust me, I've what ifed it to death. I ran it through every scenario. I've wished it was me instead of him. And that never brought me any solace, any peace. And it's not going to.
No. So have you found your solace or your peace in it?
Yeah. So it's in the book, but I met his dad 12 years after the fact. Or maybe it wasn't that long, but it was a significant amount of time after. His dad had never known anything about you know, his son, what happened to him. He just got the whatever you get from the Marine Corps notifying you that your kid has passed away. So I was able to fill him in on like all the shenanigans we did, like doing PT, and, you know, instead of doing the run, we just run into the surf and jump into the ocean. And he had this like thing where he would jump out of the water and mimic a dolphin, and his impersonations and stuff were like so good. Like Ace Ventura, he kind of looked like Jim Carrey. So when he do Ace Ventura impersonations, it was spot on. But
how does Dad take that?
It was one of the most emotional nights of my life. In a good way. It was, I mean, you know, I kind of started it with it was like a chronological timeline from where I met Macon. We were in CAX when I actually met him. And, you know, we had that squad meeting, you know, where, you know, he was the first one to kind of be like, yeah, I'm scared. And just from there, we just continued to bond. We shared a lot of things in common. Like, we both were huge Lord of the Rings fans, so we would always talk about Lord of the Rings, you know, typical high school stuff, like little, you know, like, we like to smoke weed, we talk about weed, and you talk about like the tattoos we'd get if like one of us ate it and whatnot. And you know, looking back on those conversations was always kind of weird, but at the same time, that's just like the type of stuff you do when you're bored on post and have literally nothing else to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. So when you share that with you shared those things with his father, and
oh yeah,
and how does father receive that?
He was a he was a former Marine as well, and this is Hadley, everyone. So his dad, like we already shared a common bond. Like we have the Marine Corps, we have that brotherhood. Obviously that's what drove Ryan McCon to join, and we sat in this bar in Milwaukee, and I mean just pitcher after pitcher of beer was drained. I would told him everything, up until that night. And, I told him, you know, I, he didn't know. And like people need closure. And like, it's not like it went into like details, because I didn't know the details. Like I knew like what the method was, and how he died, and what the guys from Second Squad said. But I just said it in a way to where it was just like, this is what happened. And then, I said something along the lines of, I, I think I was the last person to see your son alive. And he stood up, and just like, I stood up with him, and it was one of those things. There's no like him motioning me or anything. It was just something we both knew to do. We just stood up and just hugged, man. And I mean, tears, just
Yeah.
just powerful, because in that moment, like I feel like he finally had some closure,
Yeah.
and I finally had some closure, because a part of me was terrified of meeting him and just being like he's gonna hold me responsible, and like blame me for his son's death. And it was nothing like that at all. It was just like, just all grace, love, and understanding, and just knowing that we're part of this brotherhood where this shitty thing happens, and there's nothing any of us can do about it. But all we can do is be there for each other when we can. And that night, we were there for each other to this day. I mean, I haven't, oh shit, probably a good time to text them back, but every year around that November 7th, Marine Corps birthday, Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Tom and I are always chatting. Just a great guy.
Special relationship.
Can't say enough good things.
Yeah. I can echo that. When I met parents for the first time, I wasn't good. I wasn't in the shape I should have been in. It was very, very much. Now I look at it as selfish, because I could not get past my own emotions enough to safeguard their emotions or consider, where I was. And so then I went back, and I've been back several times now. And I have a very similar relationship to one of my guys' fathers that fell. And he, just like what you said, grace, mercy, understanding, compassion, love. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about and reminisce about stories and such, I think his family rebels in it because they feel like they were there with us when we were doing those things, and they could kind of see that and know that goodness and know that side of it. And that, that's tough to go through, but that's a big help in the recovery process, especially if it's somebody that you have survivor's guilt over, or maybe you were a leader on a field and made a call that ended up with a guy, losing his life. To have that grace or that mercy come from that family is huge and instrumental in the recovery of that moral injury, I guess you would call it. So I was curious of how McConn's family received that, because it sounds like it was very much the same way that that I experienced myself, which is great. Because it doesn't have to be that way. You could have the other way.
Yep.
But right on. I'm gonna skip forward in the book a little bit and go to a little further. After McCon had died, I developed a rash on my face. I began to get tired for no reason, and after getting a full day's rest. We were on special forces schedule of wreaking havoc at night and sleeping all day. At 22 years young back in Ramadi, I shrugged it off. The Marines had taught me to push through any limitations, even if I didn't know what the limits were. During the Crucible, a 3-day torture fest for Marine Corps boot camp, the culminating event is a hike up what is known as to the Hollywood Marines as the Reaper. I had terrible shin splints, but I refused to go to medical because I knew I'd be pushed back and sent to some rehab platoon, further delaying my graduation. Fuck that. Many Marines have dental work or were given 800 milligram ibuprofen pills for pain. Most of them had leftovers, so I made trades with them. I stole food from the chow hall to give them in exchange for painkillers. On the last day of the Crucible, I popped 800 milligrams of ibuprofen on an empty stomach. I had to clench my butthole shut the entire hike in fear of Old Faithful erupting out of my anus. The pain in my legs vanished, and I summoned the sphincter of Apollo to protect my balloon knot. You'd be shocked at what you can accomplish when there's no other option. Getting delayed in graduation was not on the docket for me. I read that part, one, because it was hilarious, and it just reminded me of having just a basic conversation with the Marine and the infantry and the jargon, but also because that's true. Like, that's one of the things that maybe we talked about a little bit coming into the recording before we went live. What the Marines do, that they strip you down in boot camp, then they build you up, and they build you with a tenacity and a resilience that maybe a lot of people prior to boot camp certainly didn't have. And it's that never quit mentality, you know. And then you're thrust into a world of the infantry, right? You're thrust into a world where any sign of weakness, any sign of emotion, any sign of let up, and it's dogs on me. Everybody around you, either they're attacking you or they're shunning you completely because they don't want to make that real in their mind. Oh, you're hurt. I want to get away from you. I don't even want my mind to know that you can be hurt or that I can be hurt. Mm-hmm. And so, we grow up in an atmosphere that says you don't go to medical unless your shit is broke, snapped in half, and sticking out of your leg. Then we'll maybe talk about you not being a pussy, right? And so, like, that's literally the world you come into following that crucible we just talked about. So that resilience in the face of that is necessary, because you're going to have those. You're going to have the hikes. You're going to be missing skin off your feet. You're going to be losing people, and your emotional, your psyche is going to be damaged. So if you're not resilient, if you don't have a basic, level of resilience, it's going to be very difficult to navigate the, war, especially. But even in a peacetime Marine Corps, you got to have a resiliency. There's going to be things.
Yep.
For sure. All right. So let's get skip forward a bit.
Okay.
Talk to me about the souk. You guys got the foothold in the souk. It was not a good place. Very saucy. Is one of the biggest spots prior to coming in. We got a lot of enemy activity. Talk to me about operations in the souk.
Yeah. So the souk was, no other way to describe it, but it was hell. I mean, you try to go and fight in there, and 3D urban environment, alleyways, murder holes everywhere. IEDs could be anywhere. So really, our first real trip into the souk was when the night Makan died. Was really the first time we actually went into the souk and started operating in it. So that was kind of our introduction into it. And the second time we'd go in would be during Operation Way City, and that wouldn't be until December 19th was when that kicked off, and that was to establish an outpost on. So we have the trapezoid. So 17th Street Security Station sat about a block or two off of Michigan to the north, right on the western side of the souk. So building 10 was going to go in the northeastern kind of corner of the trapezoid. So whew, one of the probably one of the biggest operations, if not the biggest operation that we were a part of in Ramadi. And we had 2-4 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines come in off of the, I believe it was the 26th MEU. But anyways, so we had another company of Marines, Echo Company from 2-4 with us to help us out on Operation Way City. We had all sorts of components from the Army with us. We had SEAL Team 5 was somewhere. We had all of our snipers out. I mean, just huge. Like we blanketed the souk as best we could, and then we had all the ground elements which we were a part of, and we would again, just like November 7th, we left out of 17th Street Security Station, had a list of targets and houses that we wanted to check out and hit on the way to our objective, which would be building 10. So the night mostly went off without a hitch. We've bunch of us, we would find some, ran into some caches. Of course, we ran into IEDs. We had a 7-ton with all of our main packs on it. It was just like kind of like a transport supply truck, and hit an IED. And that happened like right outside of a building we were in, and I was sitting out on the roof, and just IED goes off. Nothing really kind of surprised me anymore. By that point, I was just like, yep, IED went off. Are they okay? Yep, they're cool. All right. The wrecker will come eventually to pull it out. Like, it's just wild. So we would make it to building 10. And this was like getting pretty close to sunlight at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Probably an hour away from daylight. And we did everything right. We went into the building, cleared it out. We had our bomb dogs. We had it sniffed out. All, this, that, and the other thing. Did all of our what we could and cleared it out. It was good to go. So we all moved in, started setting up shop, started bringing in comms gear, weapons, ammo, rockets, water, MREs, all the stuff that we would need to live in there, because that was going to be our new home.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just chugging along. Truck after truck of sandbags is coming. We're forming lines and, moving the sandbags in one by one. 3rd platoon was with us, so they were tasked with going up to the roof, setting up, the initial post on the roof, so we can defend ourselves.
Yep.
And all that. Outside of building 10, I mean, there's gun trucks everywhere. We have all the heavy machinery, like the lifts from the Army. They're setting in barriers and all this stuff. Like, I mean, it is just so many components. Like, as junior corporal in the Marine Corps on my first deployment, it was impressive.
Right.
Utterly impressive. And being able to see all that work together was something else. So we're daylight breaks, we're still hauling sandbags, and the first shots start to ring out, and you don't really take notice. This is Ramadi. Like, we're expecting a fight. So the first gunshots start to come out. We're just keep working. And then we get our first casualty. One of the I think it was a bulldozer operator, got somehow a bullet made it into his cage and hit him in the leg. So from there, things just didn't stop. It just went from bad to worse, and worse to awful. So that guy gets hit, and keep working, just keep doing everything. There's plenty of people to provide, medevac and all that stuff. So he gets taken out. Before we know it, we're there's a full out gun battle going on, just taking rounds, third platoon shooting back. We start taking mortar fire. Mortar takes out a couple Marines, one of which was our company gunnery sergeant.
Just land it
Again,
on your building, in your building, or just outside?
Just outside of it. Yeah, just outside of it.
So they were dialing in trucks, or?
No, he
No, I
must
mean,
have been
the
outside of-
enemy. The enemy was trying to dial in on the trucks, I would assume, or?
Yeah, I mean so in Ramadi they I mean kind of like what we had pre-designated targets. So they kind of knew what buildings we would be looking at to move into. So they knew like building 10 was going to be like prime because it sat right on an intersection, right on the northeast corner. It was a big building, able to provide a lot of coverage into the souk and all that. So well, I have a fun fact, but I'll get to that after I get to the kind of the punchline of the story. So we're taking more casualties, still in an all-out gunfight, and because of all this, the sandbag deliveries start to slow down. It's harder for the trucks to get in because so much shit's popping off,
Right.
for lack of a better term. So we run out of sandbags to move. So I was on a little staircase that's going up to the second floor, and I'm just like, you know what? I was saving a can of Copenhagen long cut for a special occasion, and things were starting to get really hairy. So I was like, this is a good time to go get my Copenhagen. So I go down to my our platoon room, get my day pack, get my can of chew out, pack one in, and I'm walking back out to towards where the stairs were. And before you get to the stairs, the building opens up into the entrance area, the foyer. And I'm walking on this side hallway. I'm walking back towards the foyer, and I see Goose and Hackett walking towards me. And I was just like I was all excited. I'm like, hey guys, like got a fresh can of Copenhagen. And that's when I just saw them just disappear in this giant cloud of black smoke. Just this IED erupted. They disappeared. I was just kind of thrown back. I wasn't knocked out or anything, but definitely got rocked by the concussion. I get thrown back, and I'm just like, holy shit! I just saw two of my best buds just like disappear in the black smoke. Like, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
So I just rush in there, and I'm just looking. I found Goose first, and he's just laying against the side of the wall, completely passed out, just covered in black. We had desert camis and all that. I mean, he's black, head to foot. And I'm all like, okay, remembering my medical training, like try not to move the head or the neck or anything, just trying to be like, try and rouse him by some way. So I'm just yelling, Goose, like, hey, can you hear me? And then he kind of just wobbled his head a little bit, and that's when I was just like, okay, I can probably touch him now. So I just kind of like shook him a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was just kind of like, I can't see, and then I was just like, oh shit, like here, and it's just raccoon eyes, just bright white around here after I took off his safety glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh God, like Prewitt. I'm like, okay, awesome, you can see, like that's good, like can you move, like all these stuff. And so eventually I get him up, I help him to the BAS, and I get him there, and that's when I'm like, all right, I gotta go find Hackett. So I'm looking for Hackett, and I can't find him. And then one of the other Marines that was around me just was like, we already got Hackett, like he's in the BAS and whatnot.
So for the audience, kind of build up, what that is. I know in my experience, I have a lot of experience with IEDs, a lot of experience with controlled deaths and such. But to have a house that I'm taking, I'm moving guys inside, we've been here for a minute, and then boom. Like nobody's thinking that an IED could be in the floor. I couldn't imagine. And then the chaos that must have ensued after that. Was it an IED? Was it a mortar that came through the roof? Was it? Yeah. Walk them through that.
Yeah. So yeah, we had been there probably at least 3 to 4 hours, building it up, fortifying it, everything. So The only thing it could have been was a command control
Yep.
IED. Somebody had to get close enough to set it off wherever that trigger device was. It wasn't in our building like they usually aren't. Most of the IEDs that we would find, they could be radio controlled, they could be pressure plate, they could be command wire detonated, and they could be set off from fucking 3 blocks down the road or however long they have the wire for.
Sure.
So this just kind of is going to give a picture of just what we were up against, because these dudes, they don't like to fight at night. They like to get their beauty sleep and then wake up and get their jihad on. And they woke up that morning to find us in their backyard, and they called basically what would be our equivalent of broken arrow. They were like, we have a broken arrow situation, all hands on deck, and the entire city came down on top of us.
Yeah.
So we had the casualties leading up to the IED going off, and once the IED went off, I mean, somebody was close enough to set that off. Mm-hmm. Somebody was able to wiggle their way in, whether they shot their way in or snuck their way in, but they did it. They set it off, and like you said, it was utter chaos. The one good thing that happened is that we got the casualties addressed and assessed right away. We didn't lose anyone. We would have to medevac a few Marines. The majority of them were walking wounded. A couple of Iraqi police were hit pretty bad. But mostly everybody just had concussions. Bam Bam from the Utley medevac. Mm-hmm. He had his iPro stolen just before that mission. I go on into it in the book, but he had his iPro stolen, so he was on top of the blast when it happened. So he was out there with Hackett and Goose and just took all sorts of shit into his eyes. He'd end up losing an eye, and he's battling right now to keep his second eye. And he's still, maybe 10% left of his vision in that eye. So that was the worst casualty from that attack. And the only thing that saved all of them from further injury was that they buried the IED too deep. So there was enough concrete to kind of disperse all the blast into more, like it just absorbed it and then just blew kind of just heavy chunks over, just the quickest remodel ever. And thank God they buried it too deep, or I would be telling a much different story. Who knows if I would even be here to tell it,
right? Or not telling
that
it.
Type of thing.
That's a fact.
Yeah,
that's a fact, man. That's yeah, man. That's one of those situations that we have to highlight this because that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And it can't happen. Like, we can't let that, like, you got to know, okay, this can happen. Yeah. And if it does, this is what it looked like for at least a couple of guys that it happened to. I've read a lot of things, seen a lot of different literature regarding war. And that was the first time I've seen somebody put up an LPOP or heard about somebody putting up an LPOP that was rigged to blow. At least in Ramadi, at least in my experience. So that was one of those. Yeah. I got to get the full story on this.
Yep.
What comes after that? Do you guys stay in Building 10, right?
So
it still becomes an outpost, or no?
No. So
okay.
So the idea goes off. We get the casualties. We get a medevac. We get the situation handled. The whole time, just it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, just. So we're sitting inside the building. Like, we were the labor platoon or whatever. We were tasked with building the outpost while third platoon was going to do security. So at one point I was just like, fuck this. Like, grabbed my rifle. I went up to the roof. I'm like getting set up to the hook and jab, and one of the 3rd platoon Marines just turns to me. He's like, "Dude, you're with 2nd platoon, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You got to go back down. Like, we're trying to get accountability." And I'm like, fine, like, damn it. So I go back down, and we're just sitting I get down there, and everyone in the platoon is just like kind of sitting hunkered down in our platoon room. And I'm just kind of like, what are we doing? Like,
yeah.
Like, what is happening? So I go to my day pack, and I'm just kind of fiddle fucking around with it, and trying to get a sense of what's going on. And then we start to hear like, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And then we hear like a couple thuds against the wall that a bunch of dudes are sitting right next to. And there's like this little, I don't know if it's like an air vent or something in the building, but there's like this little hole in the wall with like this little piece of metal like sticking up like a kind of like a gutter or something. And we hear those thuds, and then we just hear 2 grenades go off, and just like this little blast of fire comes through this little portal. I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like, we need to get the fuck out of here. Mm-hmm. And so I just get up, and I'm just like starting to head towards the door, and Grandpa just pops in the door. He's like, get all of our shit, leave nothing behind. We're fucking leaving. And we're like, oh, all right, roger that. Finally, like, at least we have some kind of direction to move in instead of just sitting around waiting for a fucking grenade to eat. So we get up, get all of our stuff, and we line up out to get out the door. And there's a Cobra or Apache, whatever attack helicopter it was, just spewing rounds as we're like egressing out. We're popping smoke everywhere. There's smoke, and all we know to do is just follow the Marine in front of you. Someone knew where they were going, so we're just running out. I mean, it's a mad dash. It's dude, it's cheesy, cliche, whatever to say it, but it reminded me so much of Black Hawk Down. This whole situation, just the chaos that is depicted in that movie is the same chaos that we were experiencing, and just the helicopter raining down brass on us as it's just covering our egress.
Wild
madness. Yeah. So we abandoned Building 10. We don't know because they're in Ramadi, IEDs never come in ones. They typically come in 2s or 3s. Mm-hmm. So if there's one IED in the building, there's a damn good chance there's going to be more. So we abandoned Building 10, and we go to this building 55. And this is like a big office building, a few stories wide, lots of individual offices and all that. And I had been rocked by that IED. So we get in there, and I just find like this little corner, and I just lay down, and I'm dead to the world. I don't know how long I'm out. The next thing I remember is I'm just being lifted up and dropped, because I would not wake up by normal means of just like, dude, wake up. Like, shake me, wake up. Like, they're literally picking me up off the ground because like they're in a rush to leave, because another corpsman of ours, Goon, I call him Goon, and that Goon is he should be a comedian. He's that funny, and he was probably doing one of his ridiculous antics or some kind of skit, and he was prancing around and tripped over himself and bumped into this wall panel, like the old school, like 1970s Brady Bunch wood panels that they just kind of stuck on the walls back in those days. So he knocks his wood panel off, and behind this panel are 155s stacked in there, and then with wires coming out and running out to the other column,
like daisy chaining them.
They start taking off. They start taking off the wood panels, and there's artillery shells, 155s throughout the whole fucking thing. So, holy shit, we have to leave again. So,
and this is when they're trying to get you because you're not coherent.
Yeah, I'm just like literally being dropped on my head, trying to wake me up so they don't have to carry me out. Because I was a heavy dude, man. I wouldn't want to carry me out back then either. Like, I would be dropping me too.
So I think I got this part marked out. in the book. Is this when you were at OP76? You're sitting at
Yeah,
OP76?
so this is coming up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's getting close to that.
Check.
Yep.
So I got incoming, Grandpa said, over the squad's frequency. We were sitting at OP76 when building 55, which sat right across the street from Post 3, my post at OP Katana, decided to randomly blow up. It had been a suspected SV bid factory. I suppose it's safe to say the suspicions were correct. Snorlax was on Post 3 when Building 55 had enough of this war and committed concrete suicide. We were at OP 76 about two blocks away. It felt like the entire world had just been hit by another planet. Snorlax, is anyone else in the vicinity? We're concussed little monkeys. Snorlax and anyone else in the vicinity were concussed little monkeys. As for Building 55, someone thought it'd be a good idea to hammer it with some precision-guided munitions just to make sure that it wasn't that it was dead, along with anyone else inside. A Gimlar, guided missile launch rocket, pronounced Gimlar, was shot out of Fallujah over 30 miles away. As soon as Grandpa hollered incoming, we were greeted with another intestinal thumping blast from the Gimlar. Is that Pebble?
Pebble. Yep.
Pebble from 2nd Squad filmed it from his post at OP-63, several buildings down from Mars, closer to the racetrack. When he played it back, you could clearly see a body flung into the air like a rag doll thrown by a child at a playground. Some AQI fighter had just won a Darwin Award. Later that night, we were getting a resupply from 3rd Squad, who was tasked for helping Cold Steele mobile, while 2nd Squad was at OP-63, and our squad was at OP-76. We were being stretched really tight like a tiger. There was no resting or recovering from anything. Post, patrol, find shit, patrol more, find more shit, squeeze in a workout, sleep a few hours, post, patrol, rinse and repeat. Throw in a random cleaning, sandbag, unloading supplies, replacing broken crates, cleaning weapons, scraping mud off our boots, and the list of bullshit was endless. Then Grandpa got a great idea to renovate certain parts of OP Katana instead of sleeping or watching 300 for the 30th time. For Sparta. Now move this sandbag. 3rd Squad 7-ton rolled up from down the street at OP-63, and OP-76 were on and dropped off a fire team at 6-3 before rumbling down to our building. The Marines were dropped off, had quickly unloaded the supplies, and began to walk towards 7-6 when they got back to the 7-ton. It was short resupply before they were supposed to leave on a convoy back to Hurricane Point. A sniper team was also in the back of the 7-ton, who had yet to be dropped off at their insertion point. As the 7-ton rolled up outside of 7-6, an RPG hit the side of it. On the other side of the 7-ton steel wall was the sniper team inside. It was odd that AQI would attack us at night, but they were becoming more and more desperate as we continued to gain the ground. Ramadi was one massive gang war, and our gang was bigger, better funded, and much better looking. Another RPG streaked into existence, but missed its mark and blew up somewhere else in the city. Machine guns filled the night air, rupturing gases and tracers streaked back and forth. "Prewitt, let him in!" Hacksaw shouted to me. I leapt down the stairs a few at a time to get to the padlock. While I unlocked it, fist pound the door, followed by Marines coming in. "Hang on," I shouted as I rattled the chain off the door handles and flung open the door. The snipers and the truck driver came running in as our rooftop dazzled with machine gun fire. Frey and Scheist were off with their saws in bursts that made me squeal with glee. "Fuck! Mother fuck!" raged someone outside the door. Remember those Marines from 3rd Squad who were walking to us when the RPG hit the 7-ton? As they got close to our building, they had to run through a lake of shit water. It's hard to see the potholes when they're covered with something that mimics a toxic tar pit. As they ran to us, Goose hit the pothole and fell headfirst into shit water. Picture someone tripping and swan diving into sewage. Goose was wearing waders as if he was going to go fly fish in the waters of Ramadi River. Instead, he filled the waders with the toxic liquid that had eaten holes through our boots and our nostrils. As one could imagine, Goose was not happy. So unhappy that he, in fact, didn't care if he was going to die. He stopped running because the movement caused water in his waders to slosh around and hit him in the face. He eventually made it to the small outpost. With all the Marines inside, I relocked the door and ran back upstairs, leaving Goose behind to empty his waders and get undressed. I told him I'd throw some of my clean camis down because they were roughly the same size. Once upstairs, I got my camis for Goose and chucked him down the stairs. Thanks, man, he shouted. Do you have a towel? I laughed and yelled, This ain't spring break. I heard him chuckle, and then he cursed the situation once again. We've all gone through that. What the hell was I thinking when I joined the Marines line of thinking at times while in Ramadi. Some people who deployed to Iraq got to sit in one of Saddam's palaces the entire deployment with their air conditioning and daily dips in one of the palace pools lined with gold, or in Goose's case, a dip in the Ramadi River. Welcome to the GWAT, where experiences may differ. Wanting in on the action, I ran upstairs towards a penthouse that led out to the roof. Grandpa was sitting in the penthouse on the radio. It was like he was waiting for me to get there because he locked eyes with me and said, Go get the laws. Holy shnikes, my heart rate skyrocketed. I had been lugging around these 2 rockets the entire deployment and had yet to fire one in combat. The Law is the smallest rocket in the Marine Corps arsenal, about 60 millimeters rocket, but a 60 millimeter rocket packs a punch and can gut a tank if done right. I was about to get my chance to gut something. I didn't hop down the stairs a few at a time. I floated down them on cloud 9. The entire southern wall of the rooftop was covered in Marines shooting into the night. It was beautiful. The insurgents didn't roll over either. They'd come to fight. Their tracers looked like a laser lights show. They were all over the place. Rockets! Holden shouted from the rooftop. I saw one of the snipers staring at me. You know how to shoot a law? I asked him. Hell yeah, he said. I handed him one of the laws. Let's go, I said. We both hunched over and crawled towards the southern wall. We crawled over warm brass and chain links from the saw gunners that dug into your knees like Legos underfoot. When we got to the wall, shell casings flung from other Marines' rifles and began to hit us as we extended both tubes of our law. Flip out the night sight, bro, the sniper said to me. I had forgotten about switching my rear sight to the night sight, which is just a larger circle than the regular one and makes it easier to see through at night. Thanks, man, I said sheepishly, embarrassed. Cease fire, Holden shouted. The gunfire came to a stop, and Holden quickly explained the plan. Short and sweet. Keep it simple, stupid was still a favorite acronym. Fire, Holden shouted, and the rooftop roared to life, the sound of bullets. After a few seconds, Holden shouted over the gunfire, Rocket 1! I tapped the sniper. He stood up, fired, and then got back down. The explosion thumped a short distance away. This was one of the closer fights that we had been in. The buildings the insurgents used were 75 to 125 meters away. Rocket 2! Go time, I thought. I stood up. A window emitted a muzzle flashing from one of the building's windows. I put the sight over the muzzle flash and pressed the button. Thump! Boom! Rockets are cool. I didn't even notice the noise as I watched the rocket's red glare bursting insurgents in the air. When I crouched back down beneath the roof's wall, the sniper and I were all smiles. We high-fived each other. We both ripped off the rear side aperture to keep as a memento. It was like we both just hammered a Boone and Crockett buck during the rut. Cease fire! Holden shouted again, and within seconds the city was quiet. It's fucking awesome, dude. I love the law. Do you still have your sight?
Hell yeah, dude. I got it. It's sitting up there and man, I think it's in one of the mugs we got from one of the Marine Corps birthday events. But yeah,
that's good writing right there, man. I felt like I was
bud.
in it with you, and it's completely one of those situations that's like, you can see it. Yep, that things are coming unglued. Rooftop needs some rockets. Boom, you're up. And to put a shot with a lull down is awesome. To put a shot with a lull down that impacted what you want it to impact is even better. So, huge shout out there. Now, one of the things I will say, and we'll go back and we'll definitely close the deployment out. But for guys you guys got to check this book out. One big thing I've left out is I haven't talked to any. I've skipped the chapters around a little bit to not kind of show the dynamic of the book, kind of on purpose. But this book starts out talking about Ramadi, and then boom, talking about your stroke and your stroke recovery and the things that are going back home, and then going back to Ramadi, and then back sometimes to a hospital bed, sometimes to home eating opiates for your recovery and such. So I like the dynamic of that, but I wanted to leave that. I wanted to kind of piece together the combat side and then get into the stroke, because I have questions regarding why, when, after combat, and then kind of further continuum of care and what you've done and what the outlook is for that regarding the stroke. Sure. So I guess let's finish kind of getting through the rest of the deployment as far as Ramadi's concerned, and then we'll talk about the medical side after that.
All right, cool. So when I shot the log, it was like sometime in January. So we had just found out we got extended around that time. We were supposed to be leaving like February, March, and we found out we were going to be there for 3 extra months. You want to talk about a morale killer?
Oh yeah,
that's it right there. That was just a gut punch.
Yeah.
But
and now, do you have things? I assume there's big Marine Corps reasons for why that would happen. However, if you're going to stay there 3 more months, you guys are probably going to spin up to do something in those 3 months. So did you guys have like an outlook of what you were going to do in the remaining time?
Yeah, man, it was still just a continuation of what we had been doing.
Okay.
We would set up. So we didn't do like a Fallujah style push where basically you're getting online and just bulldozing through the city.
Mm-hmm.
We went through. It was fashioned or coined kind of like as the seize, clear, hold tactic.
Yep.
And that was brought forth. I don't know if it was brought forth, but maybe it was perfected by a dude named Colonel McFarland of the I think it was the Big Ready First. And he had implemented that tactic in a place called Talafar and had great success. So they brought that into Ramadi as he was kind of like the overall commander of the Ramadi forces. So he kind of led that tactic, and that was what we had been doing. So we started out with the government center, OP Hooray and OP Hawk. From there we built OP Utley, 17th Street Security Station, OP Katana. We would build another one called OP Firecracker. We had built several Iraqi police stations, and may I point out that we built them for them while they stood around and watched us and smoked cigarettes and made googly eyes at us.
It's what happens when you go to war with America. They build your shit.
Yeah, and whatever. So we just continued that. So our last outpost that we built was called OP North, and that was, if you shot a straight line from OP Katana to the north to like the next main street and put an outpost there, that's where it'd be.
Check.
So not too far away, still just on the other side of the souk to the north. So that would be the last one that we built. And that was where, excuse me, in the book, so I'm on post one night with Hancock. So him and I, we purposely like got that post together because we're homies, and like, it's much better standing post with someone else than standing it by yourself, as I'm sure you know.
Oh, for sure.
So we're on post late one night, and I didn't include it in the book because it's like kind of incriminating, but we would definitely take turns sleeping. So
50%, baby.
So yeah, 50%. Yep. So it was like almost dusk. It was still dark out, dusk, but I remember just like kind of waking up and just getting a sense of my surroundings, and honestly, dude, it was either, I know the words that were said, but I don't know who said it. Like it was either me or him, but it was just kind of like, dude, like, are you seeing what I'm seeing? And we were just looking down this road that runs alongside of our outpost, and then kind of snakes up towards the northwest, going outside of the city towards the Euphrates. And I just see like just silhouettes of like heads and shoulders and all over, just like side to side of the street is just like covered in it, just as far as back as you can see at dusk, which isn't far. Mm-hmm. But you can just tell like it's a
Whole
lot of people.
crowd, yeah.
And yeah, and obviously, like, they're not insurgents. They're, all sorts of shapes and sizes. Insurgents aren't going to do that. So it wasn't like we were like acting out of fear, but it was just kind of like, you guys need to come up to the roof right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Grandpa comes up, we wake up our platoon commander, LT comes up, and they check it out, and they're just like, well, there's only one thing for us to do, and that's to take a patrol out and go see what the hell these people want. So that's exactly what they did. They took a patrol out, and by the time the patrol got back in, it was daylight enough to where you could actually make out clothes and faces, facial features, and all that stuff. I had dropped our posts at the time were like aquariums. So like Kevlar sheets on the top, bulletproof glass, steel like a drop gate, so you could just unhook it, drop it down, and then you have a little portal to shoot out of.
Yep.
So I dropped that, and I'm looking out there with my SAMR, and like, I said in the book, my finger never came close to the trigger because these people were Ramadi. This was Ramadi coming back into the city. So things had calmed down enough to where word had passed, and people got the news that it's safe enough to come back, and boom.
Here they came.
From this initial patrol and talking to these people, I mean, just the flow of people did not stop. It was like people came in one direction, and then eventually people are coming in, and just, people going back and forth, just like nothing ever happened. It's still hard to wrap my head around today.
Yeah.
Just going through everything we had gone through, and to see everything pay off in a way to where this city became safe enough for the people, the civilians, to move back into it. All the while, all that we can think about is, all right, like, where's the sniper? Like, the sniper's still got to be around at least. Like, there can still be an IED. Like it was a very odd balance of, like, something amazing is happening, but all we can think about is everything that was shitty
led to that point. Yeah.
And could happen again. So, they kind of took away from the success that we had, but at the same time, we only knew full, all out war up to that point. So just that kind of dichotomy of good and bad, never really, we weren't able to kind of balance that out until actually we left. But so the first 6 months we were there, I mean, just straight up balls out combat. And to kind of just sum it up, the last 30 days we were in the city, not a single shot was fired. Not one.
That's beautiful.
Completely was able to turn that place around. And I've been saying this on everything I can, because how lucky were we to actually enter the Battle of Ramadi and see it to the end, where the city came back. Because 2-4 didn't get to see that. Well, actually, part of 2-4 did because of the MEU. I think those guys were still with us at that time because they had gotten extended as well. But 3-8, I think there was a couple of battalions from the 7th Marines that were there in Ramadi. All the Army guys that went through there, EOD, the SEAL teams that were there. None of them got to see what that place became after combat operations had largely been shut down and whatnot.
It's a beautiful thing because, especially for the Marines or, the fighting men, let's say, because there's contractors and there's all kind of fighting men out there. For a fighting man to enter a place that is the third block of war, which is what you did. I mean, you're all the way up. things are crazy, people are dying, you're sacrificing your friends, your blood, your sweat equity there. But at the end, to be able, it's almost like a beautiful ending to a terrible story or a terrible movie, is all that pain, that blood, that sacrifice, and when the sun rises, the liberated people of Ramadi comes back into Ramadi.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's beautiful. Because that's what we're there for. That was the mission, to restore Ramadi back to the people that come from there, that live there. So that's a beautiful thing, man. And it's awesome to be able to see that. It's almost a little bit of closure to that city for you. Like, yeah, at least, all of this could have been fucked up. We should have maybe never even been here in hindsight. But for those people at that time, we gave them their home back that was ravaged for some time before that. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, man.
I want to skip forward to, talking about the medical side of things that you experienced, and we don't have to go long on. I know we're already going. It's already been a lengthy recording, but if you can just talk about when it started, how it started, and then give me just kind of wave tops getting through that, and then wave tops, going out of it.
Yeah, man. So you actually touched on a bit of it in the book, and I was kind of like, it was part of my writing style to kind of drop hints of how, like, I kind of started off the book with having the stroke, and I kind of drop hints along the way during when I'm describing times in Ramadi where I start to notice these things, these differences in my body, and one of those was right after Makan died. I started to develop something that's known as the malar rash, and it's this rash that comes on either side of the nose, the bridge of the nose, and just kind of creates this butterfly shape going up, and then it can extend up into the eyebrows, it can go up into the scalp, and I definitely had all that. But I started developing that shortly after Makan died, and I would go to BAS, and I'd be like, literally my skin is rotting off of my face, and I don't know what to do. I don't know, like, what's the possibility of you running into something completely freaking wild and the cradle of civilization in a place that God knows what freaking diseases have come through there, still exist there, and whatnot. So long story short, I go into the BAS, and our company corpsman, shout out Doc Thompson, he has the great idea, and also with the snicker, a healthy chuckle, he hands me a tube of Vagisil. And he says, we think it might be some kind of fungal infection, so go ahead and rub this on your vagina. I was like, thanks, Doc. So that didn't work. It didn't do anything to help my face rash. But it was kind of the first sign of, I didn't know it at the time, I wouldn't figure it out until 2012, that it was the classic symptom of autoimmune disease called lupus. And it's called the malar rash, and that was kind of my first initial thought, and then or that was my first symptom that I noticed.
Sure.
So then I described that I was getting tired for no reason. I mean, I would have good nights of sleep. I'd have a full rest day, and I would just wake up still just like no energy, brain fog, couldn't really think straight. So those were kind of my initial symptoms. And like you read, I just pushed through that stuff. I'm just like, yeah, the rash, it is what it is. Tired, have a monster, like, keep going. So I, like a lot of guys, I knew there was red flags, but I didn't want to become what do you call it when you go see the wizard and you're I didn't want to become non-deployable. I didn't want to become a safety risk or anything, because back then in 2006, 2007, it was still, if you're not bleeding, you're fine.
Very much so,
yeah. So concussions, IEDs, and all that stuff. I mean, I don't know a single Marine from Ramadi who got a Purple Heart for just getting blown up and having a concussion. They should,
Though they
definitely,
should,
because
because it
yeah,
definitely has long lasting effects. We all know
yep,
that now, but I think
we
at the
know that
beginning of
now.
beginning of the war, people aren't thinking that. And here's another thing that I've come to realize. You got the NFL that has these tents, right? And these guys can go into these tents, and these professional people can look right in their eye and say, "Yep, he's good to go," or "No, he's not good to go." Why don't we have that? Well,
Yeah.
what if the answer's you deadline a platoon in a fight like that, or you deadline a company in a fight like that, and then what? Right?
Yep.
And then what are
Yep.
what are the implications of that for the VA, and how much money are you paying for the rest of these people's lives? And like, I hope that doesn't play a role or come into consideration, but you and I both know it does. I would hope that it didn't. I don't think that's the case, right? And so, okay, so we got the lupus, we got the butterfly rash going.
Yep.
Now, so those symptoms when Makan died, so this is very, a couple months into your deployment that you have those symptoms. And I'm guessing that, like what you said, you just push through that. It's like, Marine, whatever, give me some pain medicine and a monster, we'll push through it. At what point do you know you have a real problem when you get home? I assume that's when you get home or after you get back.
Yeah. So I would I get home from Ramadi, and it wasn't there was no time to process, kind of check myself out. Like I said, I was afraid to go to or to say anything, because I wanted to, I was slated to become a squad leader for the next deployment. So I was all focused on that. It was just on to the next thing. And I was like, I'm gonna have a squad. I need to get, my shit together for that. So I pushed everything that I was going through aside, focused on that. And to, get to the point of your question, we'd go through Afghanistan, we'd come back. More stuff would happen where I'd be like, okay, now I know I'm mentally not okay. And I had an episode after we got back from Afghanistan, and that'll be in my second book about that deployment.
Yeah, and that deployment was to where and what time frame?
It was to Garmsir, Afghanistan, in Helmand Province in 2008.
Yep. Bad place, bad time. And you say you're going to cover that in the next book?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Outstanding.
Yep.
I actually had a captain, company commander captain, Peters, shout out. He's not a captain anymore, but he was a lieutenant on the Garmsir deployment.
No way.
Yep.
Yeah, dude. He was in my company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
oh man.
I definitely heard stories from then Captain Peters about Garmsir, about rat holes, about taking people out in lines because they were trying to backfill. So definitely when that book gets published, we're coming back on for some.
Hell yeah, dude.
Maybe we'll do it in person next time. That way we can.
That would be cool.
We can sit across. We rap back and forth about it. But hey, so everybody that knows out there, just real quick plug. Got another book coming out. Guys that fought in the Battle of Garmsir, which was another shit show of a deployment. But we won't spoil that. We're gonna push past that for now. So you get back from Garmsir. You have another Hercules style deployment that comes with all of its goods and bads. So you get back from Garmsir. Now tell me, from after Afghanistan, what are we looking at?
So I get out, I do all the normal stuff. Like I have like somewhat of a plan. I'm gonna get out. I decided not. I was like this far away from re-enlisting while I was in Afghanistan. Decided not to because noticing red flags there, and get back. Eventually, spend my time. I spent the rest of my enlistment as a training NCO for our company. So I stayed with the battalion, which was pretty cool. And got out in July 2009, and went out to Denver, Colorado, to one of my buddies' weddings, who had gotten out before me and moved out there. So I went out there and Lo and behold, I would meet my future wife. So that would kick off a year of doing long distance while I went to school in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I would make trips to Denver, Colorado at least twice a month.
Dang.
Yeah, dude, I was, uh, yeah. I mean, I married this woman, and we've been married for, oh geez, let's go, 13 years in June this
Yeah,
year.
don't mess that
So
up on camera.
yeah, yeah, she could listen to this.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got out, went to college, got married in 2011, and then life was going good. I knew like there were some things like I should be addressing. I just wasn't. I just kept charging forward, more monsters, working out. We always talk about things being a crutch, and working out was my crutch. It was definitely keeping me going, but at some point, youth and mental perseverance is going to have a cross section of shittiness. So in 2012, I woke up one morning and my hands were like swollen, like twice the size they usually are. I mean, I had knuckles in between my knuckles from swelling and inflammation, and I had no idea what was going on, but I stuck with my regular morning routine, went and brushed my teeth, got my pre-workout, mixed it up, drove to the gym, and was just like, maybe by the time I get to the gym, hammer my pre-workout, this pain in my hands because I could barely grip the steering wheel. It hurt so bad. So I get to the gym, I go into the gym, and I go to do my, just a little warm up, some curls for the girls, pick up a 35-pound dumbbell, and I almost dropped it picking it up off the rack. And something inside of me just had enough, and boom, I started getting these swollen joints. It wouldn't stop there. I would get any joint that moves, shoulder, elbow, knees, my feet, the bottoms of my feet, all the little metatarsals and all that. I would just get crazy pain and inflammation in joints. I would get the rash. I would have full body fatigue where I just didn't want to move, but I continued to because Marine mentality, like push through it. Doesn't kill you. It makes you stronger. Pain is weakness leaving the body. Blah, blah, blah.
Now, is this all coming from lupus?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all inflammation in the joints. Okay, check.
Yep. So I start doing the VA thing. I'm trying out therapy. It's not working. Like every therapist I met, I just like wasn't good. And that would continue to drive me kind of towards this dark place that I would eventually end up in. The beginning of 2014, I still don't have a diagnosis. I'm seeing a rheumatologist at the VA trying to figure out what's going on. 2014 started, and it was like the first week of that year, I got a blood clot in my left leg, and my left leg swelled up. Like you couldn't tell a difference in diameter from my thigh all the way down to my ankle. It was just like an elephant leg, just straight down. Extremely painful. I was put on blood thinners to get rid of the clot. I was put on those for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, I'd gotten rid of my clot. I was working out again. I was doing the mud runs. I did a Tough Mudder that year. And come September, 2 weeks after I was taken off of warfarin, I had a stroke. And, you read about that in the book. I won't get into it too much, but September 17th, I had a stroke, and as if combat and everything that entails wasn't a wake-up call in itself, having a stroke at 30 years of age and good health. I mean, I don't look any different now than I did back then. Roughly the same size. And, I lost complete, use of the left side of my body. It was completely limp. I couldn't use my left arm at all. This arm that I'm moving around now. I couldn't talk. It was like I chugged a bottle of Woodford, and I had to
Like, you
learn.
know what you want to say and you just can't do it, and you know you
Yeah.
want to move your arm and
Yeah.
yep, that's
Yep.
frustrating.
Yeah, it was, and I had been I was doing, I had CPR and first aid and stuff like that. So when I woke up having it, I started to notice like these symptoms. I'm like, oh God, this is familiar. So with my right hand, the one that I could use, I busted out my old, whatever the hell it was, Android something, and just Google stroke, and it brought up all the symptoms, and it's just like, yep, 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 and yep. Great. I'm
Now,
having
what
a
about the
stroke.
side of your face? Was it paralyzed too?
Yeah, it was, the whole left side drooped. I mean, I couldn't talk. It was just like gibberish. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I
yeah.
was trying to yeah. Um so the paramedics came. I would get loaded up. I'd get sent to the hospital, and I mean, just the pain and the whole experience of it, like I have a really massive capacity of hate in me, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Like that's how bad this was. And going through it and coming out on the other side, I knew that this was a culmination of I wasn't dealing with my shit. Um and people are like, no, that's being too hard on yourself, and it's just like I wasn't dealing with it. Bottom line, I wasn't giving it the amount of respect it deserves. Um, you kind of find that out as you get older in your years, have kids and whatnot. But the grieving process, the unpacking of your stuff, I wasn't giving that any respect. I wasn't giving it any thought. I just thought that the Marine mentality could just continue to carry me through in life. And when I had the stroke, it was like, no, that youth, a resilient mindset and grit is only going to carry you so far. There's going to come a point where you're either something's going to break. And for me, it was in the form of a stroke. And from there, I'd get,
And that's a long recovery process coming back, and it's not just long for the service member. That's long for the family. That's long.
mm-hmm.
That's long for a wife, for
Yep.
parents to see. If you finally got your baby back after two, you know, hell style deployments,
Mm-hmm.
start to get a grip on life, and then boom,
Yep.
you got to go back into that, and then all the feelings that come with that. I mean, I'm sure there's some despair and some hate
Yeah.
and some pain.
Yep.
I know you
And
talk.
yeah,
You
I
talk
get
about
into
in
a
the
lot
book.
of that in the book.
Absolutely, you talk about a lot in the book of, kind of hindsight and looking at yourself on how you were acting versus how you maybe should have been acting, and you guys got to pick the book up to kind of get that bounce back and forth. But I'm glad that you did it the way you did it. You were transparent with it. You were able to let people know, hey, I wasn't handling my shit the way I was supposed to handle my shit.
Yeah.
And it takes that, because then people can realize, hey, that was not the way the guy did this way. It didn't work that way for him. So
Yep.
yeah, outstanding. Now, coming off of that, when would you say that you got? Because you look great now. You're living nice now. Are you still suffering from lupus, inflammation, things from the stroke? Do you still have byproducts of that?
So the stroke was kind of just that was kind of like the brain napalm. It felt like I just had napalm rubbed all over my brain and lit on fire. It was bad for like a year and a half after the stroke. I went through Well, this is something I'd like to get into,
Sure.
and talk about, and get the word out to other veterans out there who may be kind of going through the same thing I am, especially those with PTSD and or TBI, is the hyperbaric oxygen treatment.
Yeah.
It's it absolutely brought me back from being a vegetable, because that's what I was looking at. That's what I was staring down at for the rest of my life, was just being a disabled vet, chained to a couch because I literally couldn't get up off of it because of migraines, and just in constant pain from the
Yeah.
stroke. So I got introduced to hyperbaric oxygen through no other than my VA therapist, who I actually had found and got along with and had been building a good rapport with, and moving forward with stuff. And she said another vet that had been at the VA went through it, and as soon as I looked into it, you know, if you search hyperbaric oxygen therapy, you're gonna get just bombarded with all these negative connotations of there's not enough studies done on it to prove the efficacy of it, and blah 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 blah. I'm here to tell you, everyone, right now, I went in there almost a completely useless human being. Like, I was existing at that point. It took everything in me just to get into that place, get signed up with everything, doing all the doctor checkups and whatnot, and getting all my I's dotted and T's crossed. And I have printout somewhere of these cognitive tests that they do. So they do an initial screening, and then they do one midway through the treatment, and then they do one after. My initial one, everything is red. Like, it's literally all red, and red is bad. Middle, I have some yellows, I have a green or two, but still a lot of red. On the end, it's greens and yellows.
And these are what? These are for your cognitive processing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's just a basic cognitive test.
Okay.
Simple math.
So you're
Stuff
saying
like
that it
that.
helped you. Like, hands
Oh
down,
my
there's no
God.
doubt in your mind that that treatment helped
Yep.
you. Now,
Like,
what are the different things that they use that treatment for? I know a lot for inflammation. Is
Yeah.
that primarily what you were going for?
So I went into it for because I was diagnosed with PTSD. I had TBI from
Yeah.
getting blown up, and so I was a good candidate for the program. With the stroke on top of it, I could have gained a lot more benefit doing a and I don't know if we want to get into all this now, but so when I went through it, I was just being treated for PTSD, TBI. So you can go in for that. It's great for depression and anxiety. It's great for all sorts of any issues regarding neuroplasticity and gaining like brain function back. Literally healing the brain is basically what it is. But it has great benefits for autoimmune disorders. Um, can't like cancer patients, like people going through chemo, to come in, and the chamber will help them recover their body, heal from the damage that it does from the chemo and whatnot.
So it could be used for all
Deep,
kinds of things, not just TBI and
yeah,
PT. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
It's one of the treatments that I have not done,
incredible.
so I don't know. I can't speak to it, but you're probably, the 15th, 20th dude that I've talked to that said, hey, this works.
Yeah.
Don't listen to the
Yep.
bullshit. I think a lot of times, at least in the medical field, what seems to me is like, if you have something new that comes out, and let's say it's the cat's meow, right? It's the pajamas. It's awesome. That's all well and good if it's working for people like you and me, and we can tell our buddies and everything. But as far as like big world medicine, it needs to be peer reviewed, and in some kind of peer reviewed article, journal, medical journal, whatever the case is. And like, there's always a motive for not wanting new treatments to come in, because if you're the guy that owns the last patents and the last treatment and the last studies and all that, you're getting paid for all that. So then you need to have a peer-reviewed article that says all these people that are making money need to agree that my thing's better, and then they need to write about it. And so then you run into like not only ethical and moral dilemma, but you also run in, you run into what you're talking about. You run a bunch of people running interference so that that's not the new thing, even though it may be what the new thing should be. So I like having people come on and tell and say, hey, no, I read the bullshit too, but I went there and it helped me. And I also like when people come in and say, hey, no, it didn't help me, didn't do shit, because then we can cross that off the docket for other people, or do it quicker.
And trust me, man, I was super skeptical about it.
Yeah.
Like I did my due diligence. I researched it, and I came in with like a list of questions. And so I finally go into the building, and I meet Eddie. He's kind of the dude who oversaw everything, and he had a stroke in like 2010, and this was 2015 when I was going in there. And like me, he said he lost the use of his right side of his body as opposed to my left side. And he's telling me he's kind of going through his story and all this, and he's telling me all these benefits and all that. And then I was just like, man, Eddie, it is great to meet you. And I held out my hand, and not even thinking about it, I held out my right hand for him to shake hands with, not thinking like, hey, his right side of his body was paralyzed, and he didn't say it got better, but then he reached out with his right hand and shook it, and he's like, I can only do that because of this place. And I was just like, damn, I'm in. Yeah, I'm in. Let's do this. So I went through it. It was amazing. And Ryan, we moved back to Colorado in 2021 after a short stint by my family in Wisconsin. And I got back here, and I didn't want to get back into teaching. I kind of went through the grinder with teaching and all that, and decided to leave that behind and went back into like construction and remodeling and doing that type of thing, flooring, installing, and all that.
Sure.
And I just recently just pulled the plug on all that, and an opportunity opened up at the Hyperbaric Institute where I had gone through treatment at, and I'm only 5 days in there, man, but I already met a patient who I talked to. She went through the program in 2019. She had lupus during her treatment. It went into remission. She does maintenance treatments now. If she notices anything coming up, she'll schedule a treatment, come in, do the dive, perfectly fine after it. It's frustrating because I can't guarantee it's going to work for everyone.
Sure.
Because I know guys who have gone through there, and they got some benefit. It wasn't as big of a benefit as it was for me. But it's the same thing with anything else. And that's exactly what I experienced, going through the VA, trying all of their drugs to try and get rid of my migraines, try to control my depression, anxiety, and all that. It didn't work for me. You can have as many peer-reviewed studies and throw them in front of my face and be like, this drug will work for you. And I'll just be like, no, that actually made me want to kill myself. Yep. So there's no panacea for anything, but it's your job. It's not the doctor's job.
That's right.
To figure out what works for you. It's your job. And people, like, I had to learn to take accountability for myself, advocate for myself with my doctors, and be like, listen, this is not working. This is what worked for me. Let's figure out something where we can both move forward. And honestly, that was the best thing I did in my medical journey, was start advocating for myself, saying, no, I'm not going to get all these vaccines, because of the vaccine that kind of pushed me over the edge back in 2012 with all the swelling and everything. I got the pneumonia vaccine a week or two before all the hand swelling started, and I was just kind of like, what's with that? And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-vax. I didn't get the COVID shot because of what happened with the pneumonia vaccine. But there's a time and place for everything. And I think the way it was explained to me is that my body was so on edge with everything I had gone through, all my traumas, exposures, and whatnot, that when I got that vaccine, that was enough for my body to just like full autoimmune lupus response. And it continued to spiral and dovetail out of control from there. But yeah, I wish there was, like the golden gun in James Bond. I wish there was a golden shot for people. And I hate to break it to you, but there's not.
No golden shot, no golden tickets.
Yep. It's our job to figure out what will work for us and what doesn't, and be able to advocate for yourself in a way that everybody's going to be happy and you get to stay alive, most importantly.
Sure.
But yeah, man, it's I can't recommend it highly enough. I mean,
I'll have to link up with you after this and talk about something that I've wanted to do and not been able to really put my hands on it, at least for the I know it helps a lot of different things, and I'd have to look into it because I have seizures now, but I definitely have migraines as well. Definitely not like I did years ago. Mm-hmm. I have some rescue medication and things that have worked well, but inflammation is something that I struggle with, both hands, neck, lower back, and then your hip cage, your pelvic girdle, let's say. I have a lot of inflammation that goes down there too. So it's definitely not something that I'd shy away from. It's definitely something that I would like. And for you guys out there, if you've tried these other things, if you've got this inflammation, these headaches, these things that seem to be very GWAT veteran-esque, that the people that were in it, go get whatever treatment you can find. He's telling you hyperbaric works. Let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it's definitely something that I've researched, and I actually have a pamphlet on it right here. It's funny that you brought it up.
Hey man, I just want to plug in real quick too. The place where I work at, it's called Rocky Mountain Hyperbaric Institute, and they have a program called Healing Our Heroes, and it's for veterans, GWAT veterans that are diagnosed with either PTSD and or TBI, so it could be either or both, and if you're a good candidate and the doctor on staff thinks that HBOT would be good for you, there is a house within a mile from the clinic that we put veterans up at. Everything is paid for. The treatment is fully funded. Like I said, there's the house that you get to stay at. You can do it if you want to do 40 days. You can do 40 days straight, but it's a 40 treatment regimen. You can do 40 days straight, 1 per day, or you can do 2 a day and shorten that to like a 20-day or 3-week kind of trip.
Sure.
And if you have, I mean, I understand that it's a huge commitment, and I was kind of at a last resort, like, and I know there's other guys out there too that nothing has been working for them. Maybe it's a last resort, even if it's not. Damn it, please just check it out. If you go online and search it, like I said, you're gonna find all sorts of mixed reviews type of stuff. But it's worth a shot. And with it all funded and a place to live at, place to stay, you get to come hang out with me. Like, it'll be awesome. So like, if anyone's out there, we can, I have the links and everything. If we can get that out there, man, I just know it can help.
Absolutely. So you guys hearing it right there. If this is something you're interested in, feel free to send me a message or hit me up on this platform, whatever platform you're looking, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. Hit me up and I will put you in contact with Jared, and we can get some treatment underway. Definitely, if it's for you. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But if this is something you're open to, please hit me up and let's get you on the path to righteousness. I guess we're gonna wrap it right there because I don't want to ruin too much of the coming books and the coming stories that are that are in the works. But I do greatly appreciate you taking the time. I know we're going on like 3 hours or something right now.
Yeah, man.
But this is good information. It's information that is absolutely going to help people. And so I'm going to give you one more shout out to look into the camera and give that, the best piece of advice you got for guys that are coming up. Maybe they're struggling, maybe they're not. Maybe they're Marine, maybe they're not. But what do you tell somebody that's working their way, feeling their way through life?
Ooh. I would tell them that life is going to be hard. Life is hard. But that's no reason to give up hope. I think that there's always a shred of hope that we can hold on to no matter what the situation is. And like I said, life is going to be hard and you have to find your way through it. And if you have the mindset to not give up, to keep going forward, finding those things that work for you, you're going to find success. It's going to suck while you're doing it. But at some point, you're going to come out the other end and you will smile looking back on what you went through and where you are now. And I know you can get there because I got there, you got there. A lot of guys have gotten there, and it wasn't easy, but y'all can do it.
Hell yeah. Life is struggle. And if we didn't have bad times, then good times wouldn't feel the way they do. We 100%. Have the joy and the love of good times and of good company because we know the antithesis of that due to the struggles of life. All right, Jared Prewitt, everybody, we appreciate you coming out, and you guys took something away from this. Make sure you share it out to the community. Don't be selfish with it. If it's something you can take away, something that somebody else can learn, share it out to the community. And Choices Not Chances, this is Brian. We're going to see you guys next time.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening to Choices Not Chances podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch our podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Choices Not Chances podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger, we have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunshop.com.
Not too far. You're marking the building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good. That's a good shot. That's money. Yeah.